flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, we're going to have a moment of silence. We had a board member who was with us for a long time, and he passed away recently. So, Mike Cristaldi, great board member, great guy. Roll call.
Tom Collins, Craig Palmisano, Richard Patterson, John Pitts, Jim Galantino, Margaret Gubernolti, Stephen Giuseppe,
Here.
Michael Ruffey, Andrew Campbell,
Here.
Michael Richmond.
Here. This meeting is being held in accordance with New Jersey statute requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act Sunshine Law. Notice of this meeting has been advertised in the press and posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building. All applicants are hereby advised that if you receive board approval tonight, you must come forward and sign a form outlining the procedures for obtaining building permits and mercantile licenses. At the conclusion of your case tonight, please approach the board administrator, Palma, to sign the provided information sheet. Okay, so first is going to be the approval of minutes for the meeting of March 21st,
I'll make a motion.
2024. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have approval of decisions and resolutions number 13-2024. Daniel Dizzo.
I'll make a motion.
All in favor?
Hey, Rich, your mic's not on.
All right, our first case is Charles and Eileen Labar, 55 Seaside Court, Block 610.04, Lot 11, located in the S40 zoning district, seeking C variance relief for the size of trellis structure and potentially others in order to construct a trellis over an existing deck. Current on taxes, water and sewer payments, proof of advertising, and notifications provided, represented by Christopher Bailison.
All right, Chris, just one sec, couple just administrative things we're going to take care of, okay? We adopted the minutes, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Next month, we're trying to hold a special meeting. Want to get everyone's availability. We're shooting maybe Wednesday, May 15th at 6:30, I guess, for the tequila bar application. Does that work with everyone here? So we'll have two meetings next month. You're not available the 15th?
I can't.
I can't do 15.
I could do the 16th, but I can't.
All right, who's good on the 15th? Who's good on the 16th? Mr. Goldston, you represent them, right?
I do. So, we have to get a public notice in the paper tomorrow. So Palma was good enough to get me over the dates, and it seemed like the 16th is also a commission meeting. So I think we were trying to do it on a date other than when the commissioners meet, just so the room would be a little bit easier to get in and out of, so we're not here, again, I think might end up being a little bit of a long application. So it was our preference for the 15th, but I don't know what the board members' availability is. And then, of course, we want to make sure we get the notice correct, because there's,
Right.
you know.
So she has to Ms. McNulty has to recuse herself anyway, so from what I gathered, Palma made some calls. It looks like 7 members are available on the 15th, 8 on the 15th. Is that accurate? You confident that 7 will come if we do the 15th?
I don't want to say for sure, but I think either 6 or 7 at least. And Pinky was one of the ones available on the 16th, so it's really the same.
And Drew
Right.
Campbell can't vote either.
he wasn't one of the ones,
Right.
and Pinky was available on the 16th, so if she has to recuse herself anyway, it's actually even both dates, I think.
Right, so we're even because of, she can't participate,
Sure.
so we got, from what she gathered, we can get 7 here on either date, so
Right.
it doesn't matter to me.
I think just because of the commission meeting on the 16th is probably better, as long as the board's okay on the 15th.
Okay.
And I know there'll be people here, so we don't want you to start late and then go late again. So the 15th seems like that's a better date if everybody's okay with that.
All right.
All right.
No, we'll call, we have to put notices in the paper. I'll work with Palma, we'll get those to the press, and then Eric's got to send out his notices. So we'll say May 15th at 6:30 for your notices
Okay.
and for everyone.
And I'm going to get that in tomorrow.
That's a Wednesday night.
Yes, so it's an application for the first, the application, just so everyone's aware, is to legalize the first level. When you heard the case before, it was the second level and the deck and the lounge. This is for the first level site plan. And just also to put on the record, which I believe is beneficial for everybody, there is, as you're aware, a pending litigation. A gentleman named Scott Paymer had filed a prerogative writ case against the application, along with the city of Margate and the planning board. I was able to meet with Mr. Paymer and his attorney, Jeff Barnes, yesterday. We made some good progress, and we're hoping that by the time we get back here on the 15th, that all these issues are resolved, and we can put a clean case on without a lot of issues as the board had to deal with the first time around. So there's that.
See you next month.
One other thing, just to bring this up, because I do have another piece of litigation that I just wanted to bring to the board's attention, which is the case that I'm requesting to be postponed, the sixth case tonight, 20 South Cedar Grove. That matter is a subject of a case management order with Judge Blee. I talked to Mr. Abbott today. I'm still waiting to get back from the commissioners, their input on a possible settlement. So I would ask that case not be heard tonight, but either at the special meeting or the regular May meeting as the board sees fit.
And the city is part of that litigation, correct?
Correct. It's a case against both the planning board and the city of Margate.
All right. And you put notices out for tonight, correct?
Correct.
Do we want to hear that on the 15th also, or?
How many cases?
I think there's still a response required from the city on that?
Yes, correct.
So if that is done in a timely manner, yeah, I would recommend that the 15th be part of that.
So we could hear the tequila bar and that, I mean, that
Potentially
one's,
to settle two pieces of litigation the same night, that'd be great.
all right, and you don't want to renotice, so you want to.
No, and if someone's here and they
All
have
right, so
questions
we're going to call a meeting for May 15th at 6:30. That's going to be a special meeting, and the tequila bar case, which is the corner of Monroe and Ventnor, that's going to be heard, and then, is anyone here for that 20 South Cedar Grove? I don't think so, but if anyone is here in the audience for 20 South Cedar Grove, which is block 124, lot 218, that's the Kaplan application. That's now going to be heard at the special meeting on May 15th, 6:30 p.m. in this room. The applicant will not be required to republish or renotice, so this is your official notice to come on that date. As for the tequila bar, notices will go out for that.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Manos. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good.
Turn it over to Chris.
One last thing. All right, thanks, Chris. Get Mr. McLaren sworn in. Mr. McLaren, please raise your right hand. You swear affirm the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth?
I do. In light of this application, Chris, why don't you just start off? It's a pretty straightforward application.
Congratulations, everybody, on your new appointments and your new positions. Nice to see that. My name is Chris Balance, and I represent Chuck and Eileen LaBar with respect to their house at 55 Seaside Court. This is a variance application for a trellis in their backyard, which will be over their rear deck. The variances we're asking for, the bars we're asking for, are for the size of the trellis. The deck that it's covering is within 10 inches of grade. So all the setbacks with respect to the deck are fine. Actually, the deck could be all the way extended to the fence and to the sides, but it's not. It's confined within the rear yard. And because of the size of the deck, The ordinance allows 2 8x8 trellises. Their deck is larger than that, and it would look kind of funny putting the trellis in the middle of the deck and not having it cover at least to the sides. The idea is try and get at least side to side for a portion of the existing deck, and that's what they're doing. The reason, and Chuck will tell you, the reason for the trellis is twofold. Number one, the back of their house backs the back wall, the 2.5-story wall of the center, directly. It's about 3 or 4 feet from the lot line. So they're trying to get some relief from having to stare at that, and the trellis might at least provide a distraction. But more importantly, that center wing behind their house blocks off any south wind in the summer. Predominant wind in the summer is from the south coming across the bay. It blocks that from getting into their rear yard, and it just bakes back there. So this, with a collapsible roof, will provide some relief for that so they can use their backyard. The trellis size as proposed is 333 square feet versus 124, which would be permitted. I provided, I think, pictures for everybody to see them. Chuck can tell you that some of the reasons that they're here and asking for the trellis, rather than me tell you. Chuck, you need to be sworn and you can testify.
All right, Mr. Labar, just give us your name and address for the record, please.
Charles Labar, 55 Seaside Court, Margate, New Jersey.
And please raise your right hand. You swear affirm the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth?
I do.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening, board members. Thanks for allowing me to be in front of you. I've been a resident since 1997. I built this house myself in 1998, and we've enjoyed living at 55 Seaside Court ever since. Raised our family there, three boys, and we're looking. Did you distribute the pictures? If you look at the pictures, this is my view of the JCC back pool wall. I've been adjacent to this wall, obviously, since we built the house, and it lacks a breeze between the JCC and the homes when the sun is beaming down on the deck area at certain angles. It gets very hot. We want to enjoy our outdoor living space in our backyard. Certain times of the morning, if you see the glass above the brick wall, the sun reflects really strong off that glass at certain times of the year from the JCC. It's actually, sometimes there's been sections where it acts like a magnifying glass. So that has been an issue. Also, if you notice one of the pictures, there's a door, or a few of the pictures, the door, the emergency door to the pool building is in my backyard. And I've lived with it, I've tolerated it. I've even had a time when they emptied the pool in my backyard. So I've tried to be a good neighbor, and I've tried to not really complain about the JCC. It's kind of like buying next to the airport. You know what you got when you get there, but I'm asking for this relief. So privacy issues is a big thing when, my wife is having coffee in her pajamas, and we're staring at one of the workers greeting us in the morning out the back door.
Chuck, the board may be wondering, well, you're asking for a trellis that's open on the sides. How does that provide you with relief from the wall?
Well,
Other than
it does.
looking on an angle?
Well, it will cover, like, on an angle of the roof where what we want to construct will cover that view. But if we want to add a feature like screens, roll down screens for privacy, we can add that feature later.
Not that that's the size of the one, but that's an example.
That's an example of
Show
it. Yeah.
the board that that's essentially what you're looking to do.
So we want it to look really nice.
Do those windows look on your property, or are they above? where you
No,
can't
they're
get-
above.
Oh, so they don't.
They
look
don't.
down.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah.
As long as nobody can get to it.
Yeah, it's kind of just lets in natural sun for them, but it's the pool, and we have to listen to a lot of chaos, especially power washing on Friday nights.
And what you're holding, that's a professional installation. That's a company that manufactures these. It's not, you buy something that.
Yeah, I'm not buying a kit. We're hiring a company. They're going to install it. It's a professional looking. It's high grade.
The smallest they make is 10 by 10,
10 by
correct?
10. Yeah.
Right.
So we're
That's the
asking.
smallest one they make. Right.
Yeah, and it would look kind of goofy if it didn't fit the
Could use
perimeter.
8 by 8,
It
but
still doesn't cover your whole
that's a
deck.
small.
No,
Side to side,
but
not-
side to
yeah.
side, exactly.
Yeah.
Do you think, from your neighbor's perspective, have you spoken to them?
Oh, yeah, everybody
No
is,
problem?
yeah, they'd be here if they had a problem
They're
with
happy
it.
about, they're happy the way it's gonna look in your area?
Absolutely. We've shown them pictures, we've discussed it. We're very close with our neighbors.
I think one neighbor has a trellis, and like a 10 by 10
Yeah, it's like more of a wooden structure.
with a
With
drapery under it.
curtains. Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
Just like what you want, right?
So we wanted to kind of have an upgrade from even one of those. So my wife and I are looking at it as an investment and, you know, just want to enjoy our backyard at the shore like everybody else. But
You don't think it'll have any detriment or impact on your neighbors as far as they're concerned?
not at all. As far as I've made it quite clear what we're doing, and no one has ever, you know, spoken. And they said, good luck with your variance.
And
Yeah, you're-
enjoy.
Also,
To the extent your coverage increases slightly, because once you put a structure on the deck, that counts down to building coverage.
Correct.
Right, it points out that it goes up a few
Well,
percent.
Chuck, you're expanding the deck a little bit too, right?
Just a little bit. I mean, because just to make it uniform, I might even cut off a little section of our landing if it needed. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to catch the outside window on the ocean side of my dining room, and then catch the bay side of my sliders. So when you come out of the sliders, you're really underneath it, and that's the view that we're trying to kind of correct. You know, because if you see, there's one picture that has a chair in it, and that's our view from the kitchen table.
that deck is ground level, correct? 1
It
foot off
sits,
the ground?
it's less than 10
Less
inches.
than 10 inches.
It's less than 10
It could
inches?
extend to the fence.
So you're gonna walk there, you're gonna go out on a landing and go down steps onto a lower deck?
That's not coming up at all.
Right.
Right now, it's less than 10 inches from grade.
Yes, okay, so that means the trellis is not that high, if it
Right.
starts at the bottom and just goes up 10 foot.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, the height of the trellis is allowed to be 9, I think it's 12 from grade.
And if you notice, I mean, that wall's not the greatest wall to look at. I mean, it's got mold on it, it's cracked, and besides the privacy
Right.
issue. And we've lived with this for a long time, and I've been a good neighbor, and we found something that we'd like to put in our backyard to enjoy it and not have to be, you know,
We've tried to design it so it's effective for you guys, but as close to the ordinance as possible.
correct.
That's all.
Any questions from the board?
I just want to get my report on the record. Report is based on the application of Charles and Eileen Labar, 55 Seaside Court, Block 610.04, Lot 11, located in S40 zone. Again, by definition, it's actually a pergola. Trellis is more linear, runs along a fence. So this is an accessory structure, meaning it could be 80 square feet. They can have two of them for 160 square feet, and it can be 9 feet high. Because of the height of the deck and the height of the trellis is actually higher than the 9 feet. I believe it's 10.25 feet is the calculations I came up with. And the area you're allowed to be 80 square feet, or if you had two, 160 square feet, and you're at 333 square feet. So there's three variances: height, area, and landscape coverage. The landscape coverage variance could go away because they're increasing the size of the deck. They're covering former landscaping. If you're willing to, it's like 67 square feet.
That's not, that's the additional area what you're adding, that's not gonna be covered, is it?
No.
So if that's not covered, that
The
would.
the deck is going to remain basically the same. It might pick up a couple inches on one
Any
side.
extension's not gonna be covered by the trellis, so that wouldn't,
All right, so in your compliance plans, just indicate on the plans that your net increase of the deck is not greater than what it is today.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it. I think the applicant has done a good job expressing the privacy concerns. I mean, I showed you a picture in my report that you can see the JCC looming in the background from the street of Seaside Court. And that's pretty much it.
Any other questions from the board?
Roger, a question. If this was a retractable awning, it's completely different, right? It does now, would not be an accessory structure, right?
It's an accessory structure no matter what.
Even with, okay.
Right.
All right,
If
thank
it was
you.
over grass, you wouldn't have a landscape issue.
Right.
If it was over an existing deck, it's
Yeah.
still the footprint.
Got it.
It sounds
Thank you.
like we're not gonna have a landscape issue, right? He's gonna
I
correct that
think we're
on
going
it.
to be able to mitigate
Right.
somehow.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's it from the board? Anyone from the public like to speak? Okay, public portion is closed.
right, if there's no other questions, it's a C variance application. Looks like it's just two now, two variances for the area of the pergola. It's 333 square feet. You're allowed 80 for one, but you're allowed two, so you can have 160 square feet total. And the height is 10.25 feet, where 9 is the permitted height. And in terms of conditions, there won't be a net increase of the deck. And they'll show that on the compliance plans, and then we'll just say the standard conditions. Anything else in Mr. McLaren's report, unless otherwise addressed, any representations made by the applicant, subject to any outside approvals, if any.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Richard Patterson,
I think with the location of the property, this is really a unique situation with that giant stained wall back there with neighbors to the side, but really nobody behind them that it would affect. And being the unique property or the situation of the property that is, I don't see any negative aspects to it. So I vote yes.
Michael Richmond,
Yeah, the deck on my house is oriented in the same location, and I live across from Minnie Creek, so I get tons of breezes, and it's still hot as hell in the summer. So I know what you're talking about. So yeah, I don't see any issue with it, especially, I don't see any effect with the neighborhood, especially when you're staring at a block wall. I don't think they'll care about that, so I'm going to approve it.
Stephen Giesecke,
Yeah, I see this as a substantial improvement to your backyard. You have such an eyesore back there. I took a walk back there today and took a look at that wall, and that's like right on top of you. So I think this is a good improvement for what you're going to do, and so I approve.
Margaret Gubernalty,
I certainly think that the benefits outweigh any detriments. I see no negative effect or impact on the neighbors at all. Doesn't affect any light, air, or open space. I think it's a really attractive pergola, and I vote in favor.
John Pitts,
Yeah, I don't know that the request meets the requirements for C variance, but seeing your situation, and I live a couple of blocks away, I know the area over there, I know how hot it can get, so I approve.
Jim Galantino,
Chuck, you're going to invite us over there, right? When you get it up? The wall does prevent any air from cycling through there, and the sunlight's just probably unbearable. In light of that, nobody came out to contest it, so I vote in favor of the application.
Andrew Campbell,
The wall is definitely an eyesore, for sure. I'd like to see more of these around town as well. It's definitely going to improve your backyard, improve the property value. And I'm with Jim. I think when you're done, you should invite all your neighbors over with their kids into your backyard. I approve.
Craig Palmisano,
Yeah, I understand how hot it can be back there with no summer breeze at all. And those glass reflectings up top, 50 years ago, I worked on putting some of those in at 50 years ago, Twin Glass Company. Anyway, that's it's a nice for your home, a nice addition, and I approve.
the application is approved with 8 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our next case is Jeffrey and Michelle Greenberg, 115 South Lancaster Avenue, Block 12, Lot 8, located in the S30 zoning district, seeking C variance relief for roof slope, eave height, dormer size, and potentially others in order to construct a new single-family home. Current on taxes, water, and sewer payments, proof of advertising, and notifications provided, represented by Christopher Bellinson.
I'll start off on this one real quick. We Report is based on the application of Jeffrey and Michelle Greenberg, 115 South Lancaster Avenue, Block 12, Lot 8, located in S30 zoning district, located in FEMA Zone AE Elevation 11, but it's also within the coastal way zone. So the design and construction is subject to the coastal way zone requirements of the flood damage prevention ordinance. This is a hardship variance as well as a substantial benefit variance. Page 2 is my zoning chart, and there are 2 variances. I believe the dormer variance goes away because they eliminated the dormers on the revised plans. It's a roof pitch, minimum roof pitch of 512, and they're proposing less than 5 on 12. Eve height, you're allowed 18 inches above the top plate of the second floor. They're about 9 feet. So they are the 2 variances. And by definition, the third floor is supposed to be located within the roof of the second floor. Obviously, that case is not being met, but the 2 variances are roof pitch and eve height. Other than that, it's a by right site plan. And I provide definitions of roof pitch and roof eve height in the comments. And again, the coastal way section, which is not really pertaining to tonight's hearing, but it is relevant to discuss the applicant, what they need to do to comply further. So I have no further comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Chris Balance, and I represent Jeffrey and Michelle Greenberg with respect to their application for 115 South Lancaster Avenue, beachfront on the Atlantic City side of Lancaster Avenue, Block 8, Block 13, Lot 8, in the S30 zoning district. We all talk about how anymore every house is starting to look the same. And they really do. And that's a function of the design constraints that we have to deal with. Years and years ago, Margate had Longport had a proliferation of stucco, rectangular boxes, houses that all had flat roofs, and they were popped up all over. And they had no relief in the walls, in the roofs, anywhere on the house. It was just straight up, 2.5 stories and 3 stories, straight around, square, with a flat roof. It was a design that was unique at the time. People liked it. Margate thought it got a little too common, a little too worn out. And in about 2003 or 2004, adopted the 512 roof slope requirement. So we now would have a pitched roof on every house. Every house. No relief for that, except Marvin Gardens, where the ordinance changed to allow 2 stories only with a flat roof. Even that is true today. Marvin Gardens, you can build a flat roof. What we are here for tonight is to ask for not a change in the ordinance, but a variance from the roof pitch requirement to install and build for the Greenbergs a house that has a flat roof. It has a flat roof, but it is in keeping with the architectural times, so to speak. These houses, design choice, are everywhere but here. There are some beautiful, beautiful coastal contemporary homes in Longport, Ventnor, Long Beach Island, and what's striking about them, to me when I see them, is because I never get to see it, because there's none here. And some of them are very, very, very attractive architectural designs, and Mark's going to cover that tonight. But he's designed a house for the Greenbergs that, aside from the roof design, complies or improves in the ordinance in all respects. Front yard setback is increased on average and in 2 locations along the front of the house. The rear yard setback is increased over what it has to be. Side yard setbacks are increased over what they have to be. The landscaping in the front yard on a lot, don't forget, this is a lot that is easily 2 lots. The existing house is being torn down and it's going back up as 1 house, not 2. Single house on a lot that is 6,000 square feet, something like that. That speaks to the Greenbergs' desire, to keep the block in check, to keep the block the way it is. They came to this decision because in Sandy, the current house obviously does not comply. In Sandy, they got crushed. They're close to the beach. They got substantial first floor damage. the time came to remedy that, either build a new house or raise the existing house. From a dollars and cents standpoint, it didn't make sense to raise that house, so they're building a new house. And while doing that, they're just gonna change, they're gonna change it up. They're gonna create something that'll be unique to Margate, unique to people's tastes. You have to like that taste. But Mark Asher designed a gorgeous house that is just a little bit different than every other house we see in Margate. And we all talk about it, how every house is gonna look the same. 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, 2.5 stories, boom. What Mark did earlier today is, you'll see it from the plan you have, I think, in the front yard, the third floor is actually stepped back in a couple sections, so you don't have that monolithic wall in the front. Aside from the stair tower, which that can't be changed, that runs up. But everything else steps back on the third floor, all the way around the perimeter of the house. There's no sheer wall except for the stair tower. Okay? And we'll show you that, Mr. Palmisano, we'll show you that. I'm gonna let Mark talk about the architecture because it's really his show. Hopefully you guys agree that it's time by variance, not by ordinance change, to start considering some of these houses that really catch your attention and create a different, more eclectic look in Margate.
All right, Mr. Asher, just give us your name and business address for the record, please.
Do I have to raise my right hand?
Sure. Well, give us your name and business address first, and then you can
Mark
raise it.
Asher, and it's 115 West Avenue, Jenkintown, Pennsylvania.
Okay, now you can raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth?
I do.
Okay, and I'm familiar with his credentials. I don't know, Chris, you just
I'll
might want to make
touch
sure.
on it, for sure. Mark, if you would, give us the benefit of your experience as an architect in this area, Philadelphia area.
I've been an architect forever. I think I've been in practice for 35 years on my own. Probably registered, maybe 5 years before that. So I'm, 40 years into this. Most of our work, we've been very fortunate. I have a great story to tell about how I started in these coastal towns, 1 house and then 2 and then 5 and then, thousands. So I've been around long enough and maybe touched on some of this that's to follow up what Chris has been talking about, the arc and evolution of these houses across time, stylistically, size-wise, the technical demands that are put upon them. Yeah.
You've been in front of this board before?
Oh, I'm sure I have, yeah.
You've been in front of the lower board before?
Yes.
Yeah, I have.
You've been in front of Benton before?
I have.
Many times?
I hesitate to say that the zoning board is not my first stop.
I would ask the board to accept Mr. Asher's credentials as a licensed architect.
Yeah, sorry, I went off, So, ask away, Chris.
Sure. Would you just give the board the benefit of the property, dimensions of the property, what you had to work with, and what's there now, what's proposed?
Well, as I'm sure most of you know, it's a beachfront lot. It's complying dimensions. It's a 135-foot lot. Existing single-family house there now, as Chris mentioned, that's below flood elevation, and so it wasn't a difficult plan to design because it comports with all the zoning needs and requirements and setbacks and so on.
The required elevation is 15?
15 would be DFE.
Okay, and then
Correct.
You designed it at 17?
Correct.
Because of the history of the property and the history of the storm?
Correct.
But at 17, elevation 17, it still complies with the height requirement?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And 17 is what we can park under. So if we'll eliminate an existing existing detached garage that's buried up in the upper left-hand corner of the property.
So the Greenbergs came to you with a desire, an idea to design a new home for them instead of lifting an existing home, and what did you guys come up with?
Well, the house that the Greenbergs have, in many ways, were mimicking the floor plan. I think it works, pretty well. It's, living, dining, kitchen, porches, pool on the ocean side, and master bedroom and +5, family room, and all the normal things you would find in a beachfront home.
Is that five bedrooms, right?
Correct. So the plan of the Greenberg's house wasn't necessarily the problem. So we designed a new home conforming with all the zoning issues of the day, of course, and the flood issues, and I think someone mentioned this is a V-zone house, so of course we're well versed in all of that. But then we started to churn what this thing would look like. And I think I had very patient clients because we kept designing a traditional home that wasn't quite meeting their expectation or perhaps even ours. So I proposed to the Greenbergs, why don't we look at this through a much more modern architecture lens, knowing that we would have a flat roof variance issue in front of us. So we were willing to take that chance and see, where the chips would fall.
And what'd you guys arrive at?
So, just quickly, aesthetically, it's in your packet, but, it sort of looks like this, are the miracles of computer rendering technology.
Take the board through the house, front, back, side.
So we're looking at the Lancaster street front approach. Here's the garage setback. It's a 2-story box over the garage, stair tower, and then a series of kind of slab porches that step back away from the street. And so here's our stair tower, and then this is kind of really our living box on the beach side.
Mark, that plan, what you're showing is slightly different than what's in the board's package, because at the third floor, the house has been stepped back to give some relief from a sheer wall.
We did. I think, it was a suggestion that we could step the third floor back, just as we had on the back of the house, so the third floor doesn't align with the floors below, and just gives it a little relief. That being said, the porches are, the screen of the house that are, of course, on the setback envelope. This is another street view, more looking at it from the beach side. Here, maybe it's a little more telling that this steps back from that, just as the garage steps back from that. So again, just a beachfront modern house wrapped in the porches that you would expect.
Well, we're looking at that elevation. What's different about this elevation than what's there now is that that house steps back as you go to the north.
Correct.
Different than what there is today. Today, there is about a 20-foot or 13 or 14-foot setback. It's just down the front of the house. With this house, you've got at the garage, you've got a 20-foot setback.
Well, you're going to step back, of course, to park in front of it. So it's sort of ipso facto, it steps back. But of course, it also is going to, relieve that long elevation. You're not going to have this thing, running, 14 feet off the front wall or down.
Different than it is right now.
Yeah, so you're kind of breaking it up into its components. So, same kind of thing, and then the beachfront, again here. So it's almost like a pilot house on the third floor, on top of the 2 lower levels.
Now, with respect to the design, you've designed it so it conforms to every other aspect of the ordinance, am I right?
Correct.
In terms of the front yard setback versus what's there today, front yard setback requirement is only 5 feet, I think, is that right?
I think it's 6.
6.5.
5 is the front.
And your porches are there,
Correct.
and the house is where?
And the house is going to be 1310.
That's the average along the front, and you've got subsections, obviously, they're further back.
Correct.
And your side yards, again, are in excess of what they require. You require 10 or 11.
Correct.
Total 22.
Correct. So, on the one side, of course, currently is an existing garage that we're taking down, so, effectively, it's 0. And it's going to 11.3.
And actually 27 on the bulkhead side.
correct, which is a slight improvement. It's about 29 feet on the beach side where it was 27.5. So it pulls back a bit.
And your rear yard, the Atlantic City side, that's 13, when it's only required to be 10.
Correct. Correct.
Some of the other accessory items, I mean, the shower is smaller than it can be, it's set back greater than it needs to be.
Yes.
Your mechanicals are set back greater than they need to be. I think it's 5 is a requirement, you're more like 10 or 11.
Yeah, well, they're up against the porch, they are 9, 6.
The parking is required to be just 3 spaces instead of 5.
Correct.
This is the second floor.
Talk to us, if you would, about the style of the architecture and why you think now is a good time to introduce this, or Margate should consider.
Well,
With plenty of relief, starting to look at this type of architecture design.
well, it's all subjective, right? In a certain way. But I think we design a lot of houses here. You see a lot of houses here. We certainly live in the 512 pitch envelope, and that's fine. But at a certain point, you kind of ask if there's something else, something better. Because in a lot of ways, the 512 pitch forces you into a solution. And as I was saying to Chris a little while ago, talking informally, what happens with towns and their zoning codes is we all get really good at it. We get so good at it, we can manipulate this code down to the razor's edge. And
To maximize.
to max it, yeah. So you'll see around town, you'll see these 512 pitches all over the place that are, in a way, kind of not very historically based architecture because they're too flat, and they're not modern architecture either because they're flat. So you get stuck in a kind of an odd hybrid world. So I was hoping with this house to take a more honest approach. Like, this is what it is. It's modern, but I hope it's kind of simple and understated at the same time. We don't want to hit people over the head with architecture. I hate to get all preachy about it, but if you ever see a turret or something like that on one of our houses, it's not one of our houses. I want it to be a little more quiet and what modern architecture, good modern architecture could do. So if I talk about sort of the evolution of my own practice here across all the time I mentioned earlier, we've seen this evolution. And I was doing really traditional architecture for a really long time, and I got very good at it. And then we started doing transitional, and then we finally got to this modern world. But it was based on the building blocks of the traditional architecture that I learned a long time ago. And the proportions are good, and it's simple, and it's clean, and there's a lot of care and the detailing.
It's hard to hide anything.
It's hard, exactly. You
can't
can't hide
hide-
anything.
you can't hide
And I
anything.
think, we have a good client who is pushing us to do it well. It's meticulously crafted, which gives it an enduring quality, and that's what we're looking for. This is the Goldberg's family home. We were talking in the lobby. They have a lot of family and kids and so on, as we all do here. So it's a destination house that'll be here for a really long time. So it's built that way.
One of the concerns with the flat roof house is the massing or the volume
Right.
of the house on the street and on the surrounding area.
Mhm.
One of the things you showed me is that, in fact, this house or a house like this is less volumetric or has less volume, can have less volume.
I think that's, part, we have to be cognizant of mass and volume, and we have to be able to, think about those things and to be candid. If I'm asking you for something, I have to give you something. I feel that anyway. And, so what's shown in red was really built on the traditional house that we designed first, that was compliant, that we didn't have to come here for. So I have, this is the allowable ridge height, and I have all this volume, and the porches, of course, even have to be 512, which is, kind of another problem, but.
So explain, you've been working with that exhibit, explain to the board what
So what I'm looking at here, of course, is the proposed modern flat roof house with, and what's in red is the shaded volume of a traditional house on top of it. So, all this volume is carved away. We're not using it. All this volume is carved away, all this volume. So in a
But
way,
how can you say that if we're at the permitted height now
Right,
with the
right.
flat roof, and if you put those
well, you're just,
gables on there, you couldn't without.
well, because how you're making those gables, how you're making these houses today is sort of through, you're hiding the volume behind sort of false peaks.
So you can rest that roof on this house and make it work
Correct,
from a height standpoint.
correct.
And
Correct.
that roof and that house, if it had that roof, has much more internal volume, not.
Well,
space
it's a lot
not
more
used.
volume, for sure. It's probably, it's kind of falling at you from the street. But again, as I said to you in the lobby, it's almost like taking the clothes off of the thing. Like, this is all the decoration. We just stripped it away and left the existing volume. So the plan that's under here is a plan that we designed in a traditional house. We just reworked the exterior and started carving away that unneeded volume to have this more modern aesthetic.
In other communities you've worked around here,
Yeah.
Star, around Long
Mhm.
River,
Mhm.
do these houses fit in, so to speak, with the neighborhoods and with the area when they're mixed with a traditional?
Yeah, I think you want that sort of diversity, of type.
Like, you don't want somebody driving down the street saying, geez, all the houses look the same?
Yeah, you don't want that, yeah. But I think, because it's really about the scale more than the style. And I think that's what it's about here in terms of, this house, if this were a traditional house, it would have 3 levels of porches in front of it. And it would have a stair tower and have a garage and would have all these parts. So it's not, just radically different. It's,
Except for the treatments, the exterior treatments.
yeah,
There's a section of this house that is only 2 stories, not 2.5.
Correct.
That's above the garage, and that's
correct.
significantly different than it is now.
Right.
Now it's 2.5 stories straight, edge to edge,
Well, we wanted the approach to the house to be lower.
softer.
So that was the thought behind it.
There are no other variances associated with the application, just the 2 that we talked about?
Correct.
Now, with respect, would you consider the top of the second floor wall, and then it drops back? Is that an eave, or does this house have eaves, so to speak, as they're defined?
There's a kind of a eave condition, I guess, or sort of a cap on the house, an overhang that wraps around it, so I guess you could arguably call that an eve.
Is that on the roof?
Yeah. So isn't that really an eve, and that's an eve, it's just not in the traditional,
Mark, would you mind just moving a little bit closer to the microphone?
Oh, sorry,
With your-
yes, sorry.
The exterior of the home, it's going to have some different exterior treatments. I see cedar type.
Correct.
To break up the coloring
Mhm.
around the house.
Yeah.
We have to justify the variances under the municipal land use law. On the positive criteria, I think there's a few of the criteria that this meets. I look at the aesthetic aspect of it,
Correct.
which really is defined as a desirable visual environment for creative development techniques in design. Talk about that for me, and whether this house addresses that.
Well, that's really the main reason we're here. That's the reason we do this, is to make that desirable visual environment. We're here for the long haul, folks. So let's make it good for a long time. It's a nice, beautiful building, I hope. So that's the
Talk about
criteria.
linear and open space. And I say that because-
Well, I think you could say it vis-à-vis the volume that we're not building. We can build a larger house, the porches, the roof peaks, the 412 pitches everywhere. So we're demonstrably building less volume. So
And of course, the important aspect is it now will comply with the federal, state.
Correct,
local,
correct.
Flood compliance rules?
Yeah.
You- I know you said it, but
Yeah.
it's, from this angle, it seems, so you could put that red roof on this house and still meet the height requirements?
I can almost draw, here's a ridge.
Yeah.
Here, that connects.
But over that third floor would be,
And then these are sort of, I hate to draw them.
Okay.
But,
So the slope would just come down and cover where you have windows and you would have dormers?
Correct. Because I don't think, a height variance is not something we would might be.
it just looks so high from here, but the actual roof wouldn't be much higher than that.
Correct.
You're coming down covering the windows.
Those points are there. Maybe it's a little misleading, you're kind of looking up at it a little
Yeah.
bit,
Yeah.
Yeah.
With respect to the negative criteria, whether the variances can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, without substantially impairing the purpose and intent of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. First, let's talk about, and do you see any impact to the public good, to the neighborhood? And that kind of.
No
falls into-
negative impact.
Yes.
No.
Why? Does that fall into the zoning
Well,
compliance?
as we've talked about, we're meeting the zoning code in terms of its setbacks, its building coverage, its lot coverage, its grass. So we're following the code, height, and so on, right down the line. So the variances we're seeking are pretty minor in that sense,
Except for the design aspect.
except for the design.
Design.
Correct.
There are no bulk controls.
There are no
bulk
correct.
controls that we're asking for. It's all
Correct.
design.
Correct.
Obviously, we're looking to depart from the zoning ordinance.
Correct.
But do you think this can be done in a way that doesn't substantially impact the ordinance, or substantially impact the master plan?
I do.
And when we say, think
I-
of Marvin Gardens, for instance, where
Yeah.
flat roofs are allowed.
Correct.
I mean, so it's not something that's alien to the city.
Yeah. I don't think the building is going to stand out in a negative way. So I'm not really sure how to answer that question. The code, as you say, Marvin Gardens has flat roofs. We're meeting the code right down the line,
Let's
so.
put it this way, it's not exactly the only flat roof house in the city.
No, but at the same time, we're here for one variance for this lot. I'm not trying to rewrite the Margate city zoning.
Hey, Mark, I got a question over here. Could you put that other one back up?
The red,
No, not the red one.
I have this.
That one there.
Yeah.
On the very top, third floor,
Yeah.
what type of windows are going in there?
What
Are they
height?
permanent windows, or are they,
Oh, I don't think we've gotten that far. I would think they'd be operable. I mean, you're on the ocean and you can, the sea breeze and, I would assume they're operable. I don't think we've discussed it, but, obviously, we live in an air-conditioned world, and I do have clients that don't ever open their windows, but, I think they're operable, sure. Now, what the manufacturer is.
Mark, this
Getting-
house doesn't create any additional shading
Huh?
or sun blockage or view blockage
Yeah.
than a traditional home would,
No,
or the existing home would?
no.
That's all I have. Board members, you-
so Mark, my concern would be people being able to access that up there.
Oh, well, this is a deck. But
It's
what's,
third floor,
you-
it's allowed on the beachfront.
But the railing is stepped back from the edge of the, if I look at the beachfront, the railing is back from the edge of the building. So we didn't really want to see that edge.
Mhm.
Mark, you brought some pictures of other designs that you did in a similar manner, that homes that exist in other municipalities.
Well, let me see what I have thrown together here.
That's the front of the house, right?
This is the beachfront side.
That's the beachfront side.
Yeah. So again, like over here, you can't see the rail because it's not there. It's only here. Yeah, we don't, so the porch roof that wraps around is only deck on the ocean side. We just didn't need acres of deck up there. And I didn't want to see the rail if I could help it. So, Chris just asked me, something.
You brought
ha-
an
houses-
exhibit, I was curious.
Well, I brought these as packets. Can I hand these out? And I don't know if you label these as exhibits, but here, let me come around and. Yeah. So there's there's maybe 5 or 6 or something. You have to share.
Mark, while we're sharing, can you go over to A coastal construction of this lower level?
Well, this is houses on
Piling.
piers. It's going to be on the way we do it. Some others there's maybe a 4x4 pier with a cluster of piles, and then a CMU pier on top of that, and infill walls all around it. So you don't know they're there, frankly, but they're breakaway walls.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I think now that I gave them away, I don't know what they are, but no, I have one. So I think Chris asked me to show what other examples. So these are just how projects either in our office or under construction or under design. V9 is a 3-story modern house that we're designing, and again, sort of you can see it's not your father's Oldsmobile.
Well, Mark, I'm sure a lot of board members have seen the ones going up in Longport,
Yeah.
right? Down 32nd in the Bay, there's 2 brand-new ones there. On the beachfront from 25th Street down, there's a couple new ones
Yeah,
also. At the Point, there's a beautiful one down there at the Point.
Yeah.
They're not black and whites, that's what they're not black and whites, which
Yeah.
we see a lot of.
Yeah. We don't do black windows. Yeah.
No, okay, but I mean, that's where we're getting so many of them.
I can't anymore. But I think
Another thing, this board, we approved the 9600 condo, the 3 condo, and that sure looks like a flat roof.
It's in a different neighborhood with all flat roofs.
Well, beachfront, this is beachfront also. Yeah,
It's not comparable.
So-
okay.
There was one approved on Kenyon Avenue.
I'm not against it, just saying.
It's not, they're not alien.
But
I'm just saying, when you ride down Atlantic Avenue, I saw it today, and I took a picture of it because it looks like a flat roof
So-
from where we are.
But I guess the point of this exhibit is yes, you can make nice modern houses that are not sterile, right, is kind of the point.
My point is, on the board, I don't want to tell people what kind of design to make,
Yeah.
what style they can't have.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thanks, Mark, that's great.
Okay.
As I said when I started, the 512 has been on the books since 2005, 6. And it served its purpose. It's been a long time coming, and 5 years ago, I probably would not have been here with this house. But I think 20 years is enough time to let that ordinance serve its purpose, and it has. And to come before the board now, maybe a few more of these will come in slowly. You can kind of spoon feed it in, rather than do an ordinance change. I'm not suggesting that. Just suggesting under the right circumstances, the right locations, with the right architecture, it may be appropriate to start considering designs like these. Thank you.
Anybody else from the board? Anyone from the public like to speak? Public portion's closed. Yeah.
Chris, ready? Frame a motion? All right, so, Chris, as a condition, you'll submit revised plans showing those third floor step backs to Roger's approvals? They're not on the initial plans, am I correct? Okay, so that's one of the conditions, but the C variance application for the minimum roof pitch, 512 is required, it's a flat roof, and then the eave height, you need 18 inches above the top of the second floor, and they're more than that because it's a flat roof. The conditions, I noted the one, they'll submit revised plans to be reviewed and approved by Roger, consistent with the rendering showing those third floor step backs, subject to outside approvals and DEP or whatever you may or may not need. Applicant will comply with any representations it made during the course of the hearing, and then we'll note anything else in Mr. McLaren's report unless otherwise noted on the record.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Richard Patterson?
Well, I don't think this is easy, and I came up with it, Chris kind of brought up all the issues that I was thinking about this. I'm not for or against flat roofs, and the question I had, which Chris hit on, was should a change of this magnitude be decided on one application, or should all these valid suggestions regarding flat roofs, should they be considered in order to modify the master plan? And I think he answered my concerns, that I know there's been talk on the board of changing this, and I think if we allow it one at a time with variances, we have more control until the new master plan is drawn up next year. So I think we have more control by doing it by variance. And the other thing that Mr. Balanson brought up, I think it's the same as the overlay district we used to have, that served its purpose, right, redeveloping the whole end of Margate. And I think that the flat roof thing may be in the same position. So I don't see any detriments here. I would say that my vote is for this particular piece of property only. Not an invitation for flat roofs everywhere, but take it one at a time, so I vote yes.
Michael Richmond?
Yeah, I don't see any detriment to the neighborhood. I thought it was, I know what Mr. Asher's talking about when, we have the pitched roofs, and now everybody's doing the, I don't even know what you call it, the Dutch roof, or, so now we have all these houses with it, which is, to me, is not the most attractive looking roof style. I think variety is the spice of life, and I think, I agree, we're gonna be changing we're gonna be talking about the master plan in a couple of years, and I think we can address that further, but in the meantime, I think this is a good way to do it on a case-by-case basis, so I'm gonna approve it.
Stephen Giesecke?
I'm not totally sold on the flat roof idea yet. I think we worked really hard to try to stop the three-floor look that has been coming around. So we worked real hard at pitching the roofs for that specific reason. And to tuck the third-floor decks in so they don't have a pure appearance of a third-floor deck. I'm going to decline this one.
Steve, just so you know, when you have a beachfront property, that tucked-in deck does not come to effect, is that correct?
Yes, the design standards are for everyone that is not beach block.
Right.
Waterfront.
So you know that?
I do know that.
Okay.
But it's still the same third-story look that
I know what you're saying.
Okay.
Margaret Gubernalty?
While this is a deviation from our land use law, again, I agree with the other board members that we have to look at each individual property. I think it's a unique design. I think it certainly creates a desirable aesthetic. I think it's the right location for this design. I see no negative impact. We're meeting all the other criteria that is required. It doesn't negatively impact our municipal land use law, and the benefits of the deviation certainly outweigh any detriment. It's really unique, and it's their design of choice, and I approve the application.
John Pitts?
Yeah, I appreciate the detailed explanation explanations, certainly provided some insight into the design of the home and things we should be considering here in Margate going forward. I think the issue, if we approve this, is we're going to get one or more applications at every planning board for builders wanting to build a flat roof. If I were a builder in town and one got approved, I would immediately be jumping all over this. So I think we need to consider it going forward, but I don't think now is the time, so I deny.
Jim Galantino?
We had a cutting-edge architect, his name was Robert Johnson, back in the 80s and 90s. He designed a number of these flat roof houses. There's still a lot of them in town, and they kind of blend in with the rest of the neighborhoods. There's a lot of them on the beachfront. You'd be surprised how many are out there. The house was substantially damaged. It's on record during Sandy, so apparently the house, when it was built in 2008, was not built to the right height. And that was the old 11, which is now 9.8. So if it's going to now be 17, I think the house is going to be, that's, what, 7 feet higher than the original house?
It's 4 and 2, 6.
6'2"?
On the original house, I don't know the answer to that. I know it's.
I think it's 11. I'm pretty sure.
Off 11 and 6.
Yep, when Leeds built it in 2008, I think he was at 11. Just that alone, I like to approve flood compliant houses because I don't want any more claims on houses after another maybe event would come in to town. I vote yes.
Andrew Campbell?
I agree with Jim on the flood compliant piece. I like the uniqueness of the project. I don't see a detriment to anything. I vote yes.
Thank you very much.
Craig Palmisano?
I can't say that I really like the style of the home. I'm more of a traditional guy, but I don't want to say that you can't build a traditional, or I mean, a stylist home like that, a mountain-type home or a beachfront home. And it is on the beachfront, and it's unique, and you reduce the third floor mass. And I'm tired of black and whites, but I don't want to dictate style, and I agree with Mr. Patterson's assessment of it. And this is one house, and I'm going to vote yes also.
The application is approved with 6 in favor and 2 opposed.
Thank you all. Thank you. Do I get a cookie or?
Yeah. They're homemade.
Yeah,
Just curious what he said.
I'm talking to you too.
I know, but I was curious.
Mike, give me a call.
We don't have one either.
I still have one more to go. All right, I'll take one more.
Okay.
Save it for later.
Our next case is Kyle Pollock, 8119 Marshall Avenue, Block 709.03, Lot 1, located in the S50 zoning district, seeking C variance relief for building coverage, side yard setback, and potentially others in order to elevate an existing single-family home. Current on taxes, water, and sewer payments, proof of advertising, and notifications provided, represented by Eric Goldstein.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. The report is based on the application of Kyle Pollock, 8119 Marshall Avenue, Block 709.03, Lot 1, located in S50 zone. Minimum flood elevation, they're in a zone AE elevation 8, so the bottom of the floor as a minimum has to be at 11, meaning the first floor around 12 or higher. So you can see variance relief to elevate an existing one-story structure in order to provide additional storage and to allow parking to be off the side street, which is required in our ordinance. So page 2 is the zoning chart. They need a right side variance for Marshall Avenue, calling on Marshall Avenue, the right side. 10 feet is required, 3.52 feet exists, and 3.52 feet is proposed. So that's a variance because they're going higher than base flood plus 3, which is allowed by the state. Building coverage required to be 30%. They're at 30%, and they're going to 35%. Actually, no, it's 35%. So they're 5% over, but because you're going higher than base flood, that triggers a variance for that. The garage door setback, it's not clear in the plan, but you're required to have 18 feet. I think they're showing at least 18 feet on the foundation plan, but it's measured 15 feet on the site plan. So clarification on that's required. Again, this is a straight lift. The one benefit of them putting the garage at the location where it is, you're getting it off of Huntington Avenue, which is not an ideal spot to back into, and on the side street of Marshall Avenue, which is less trafficked. And I think that's clearly that's a benefit. And again, because they're going higher than base flood plus 3, that's why they're here. If they went to base flood plus 3, I could approve this in the office, so here we are.
Thank you, Mr. McLaren, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, Eric Goldstein on behalf of the applicant. Before we get started, I just wanted to say, as my first case tonight, that we all miss Mike. He would be here if he could. I think one thing he always talked about, he loved being on this board. He loved all of you, and it took so much pride in the city. So, you know, we really lost a good one when he passed away. So I think we're thinking of him all the time. Having said that, a little bit of an easier note. Represent the applicant. Mr. Pollock is here to my left. His architect, Mr. Serpico, is here to my right. As Roger said, what this really comes down to is the amount of the raise. If he was raising it to the BFE minimum, we wouldn't need any variances, and we're only doing an existing non-conformity for the variances we need other than the garage door, because the house exists exactly as the footprint now, as it did when it was damaged, as it will in the future. It's just going up. So having said that, I'm going to try to be brief. I know the board favors house raises, especially getting them out of the floodplain, as Mr. Galantino generally will comment that any house that gets out of the floodplain and over the existing required BFE is a good thing. But as Roger's report correctly points out, the fact that it's going up higher than is otherwise allowed triggers a variance just for the items he's listed, which we agree with. So, Mr. Serpico, we're going to be very brief here for the board. They have a long night. If you could just give the board your qualifications, and Mr. Manos will swear you in as a...
Mr. Serpico, just give us your name and business address, please.
Peter Serpico, the firm is Serpico Architect, 1201 Boynton Avenue, Boynton, Westfield, New Jersey.
Okay.
That's Union County.
If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth?
Yes, I will.
Great, thanks.
Just walk through your qualifications real quickly. I'm not sure you've testified here before, so the board wants to know that you are a licensed professional in the state and that you are a preparer of the plans. And give us your qualifications.
Great. Graduated New Jersey Institute of Technology 1986. Became licensed in 1997 and I've been practicing since then, licensed in the state of New Jersey in good standing. I have attended many boards, not this one in particular. I do a little more work up in the Toms River area for these house lifts. This isn't new to me either, and this one is a fairly simple one, as Eric mentioned.
Mr. Chairman, I just ask you to be accepted as an expert in the field of architecture.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Serpico, we know you prepared the plan. Walk us through the house raise, of course. We know how high up we're going. The garage door setback, of course, is important because we need to get a car into the driveway. 18 feet is the minimum. We're at 14.96, a little over 3 feet short. So if you could just show the board what we're up to here.
Yeah.
And what Kyle wants to go into this house.
Pretty straightforward. Kyle Pollock and his wife came to me a few years back. We've been churning this for a while, and he had some bigger dreams. He wanted some further additions over the existing house once it's lifted, but we really dug into this and got him some upfront pricing, and it is where we are now. We're basically going to lift the house in its exact footprint, as Eric mentioned, and the lower level, as the code does require, simply open areas. We have a double bay, back-to-back parking area, garage. Yes, Mr. McLaren, the garage will be set back.
Perfect.
The site plan is a little deceiving. When I read your notes, I got a little nervous, and then I went back, and the site plan does show a cutoff. That's the edge of the building line. It'll be a
Then when I saw the
cantilever.
foundation plan, it looks like you were trying to accomplish that.
Yes,
Okay.
so we will meet the 18 feet as a minimum, for sure. And again, nothing down here that is any different. There is a new stair that leads up to the front door, and there will be an internal stair that drops from the house down to this level. No living space on this level, as we discussed, and we appreciate your help up front with a few back and forth emails. Your office was very helpful with us. When you get to the main floor, again, this is Mr. Pollock's existing home. Nothing has changed whatsoever except the stair in the middle, hallway, which worked out beautifully. It's going to drop down so he can access this level without going outside of the house and into another door. Dining room, kitchen, living room, laundry, bedroom, bath, and bedroom. As Eric mentioned, it was pretty simple in terms of the layout. Not an inch of the footprint has changed. The only thing we did add was a deck, which was on the lower level. We're really just raising it, same footprint. And Kyle and his wife wanted a little connection to that deck from the master bedroom. So we're adding a little walkway, a little kind of catwalk across the side to meet the new deck. And it will drop onto the main street. Also, as Eric said, the garage, in terms of my few visits down here and did some studies, this road is a bit more quiet, better access for the garage, better use on that street, instead of him backing out on, I don't know the name of that.
Huntington.
The busier street.
Yeah, Marshall.
And that's really it. I have a few elevations, which I believe you saw. Again, pretty simple. We did take this to a deeper level before we thought we needed the variance. We did some structural drawings also, the layouts, so he can get some pretty good pricing up front. So we have the pilings already set up. We need to tweak this a little bit, but he's pretty far into the design at this point. And again, everything you see here, the siding portion is the existing home. The same dormer, nothing has changed whatsoever, just the lift. And then this would be cement plaster, breakaway walls as needed. I don't think we need them. That's what
Not in this
Mr. McLaren mentioned also. So no breakaway walls, but a cement plaster around, an access in the front, little slider out the back. That's about it.
Just to satisfy the positive and negative criteria, do you find this to be a positive, the design that Kyle had you put together, and satisfying the purpose of the New Jersey Municipal Land Use Law and the City of Margate zoning code?
Yes, I do agree with that.
And to the extent that someone could possibly say there's a negative associated here, would the positives greatly outweigh any such negative?
Yes.
Okay. And do you find any negative associated with this design?
Not at all. I did drive through the neighborhood about a year ago when we started to really work on the final designs. And a lot of the homes, as we just heard at the previous hearing, they're a lot busier. This is a simple home that maintains its original fixture that will complement the neighborhood.
Just one question. Can I get a cribbing detail when you submit the drawings? Cribbing detail. How are you going to raise the house?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, for the future, you mean?
Right.
Okay, yes. We're using CMU block with piles around the corner, but yes, we'll have the whole cribbing detail on that.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman, we would rest. This is a typical Margate house raise out of a sandy damage. That's the substantial benefit greatly outweighs the negative, but of course, we'll answer any questions the board might have, or if the public has questions. I couldn't see anybody objecting to a house raise, but we'll turn it over to the members of the public, I guess, and potentially answer whatever questions exist, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does anybody from the board have anything?
I have a question for Mr. Serpico. Did you have Sandy Moore as one of your professors at NGIT?
Yeah. Well, she was the, I believe, Sandy, the woman, or?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't have her, but she was, I think, the dean at the time. She became a dean at my
Right.
last,
Yeah, she was one of my, okay.
last years. Is she still
Curious.
around, or?
As far as I know.
Wow, great. Great school, by the way. It's, I've met a lot of colleagues in my day from all these big schools, and they're not doing any better than me in terms of knowledge, you know. I have a good technical background. I put a little of everything together, and,
She always went at Afghan. She
I
was
give-
called her the female Clint Eastwood.
that's right, that's right. I give NJIT a plus. Did a good job for, boy, we talked about it the other day. It's like $3,000 a year for 5 years. That was my tuition back then. And my dad paid it, so.
That
Thank
big
you.
one book now.
Okay. Anybody else from
Thanks.
the board? No? Okay. Anyone from the public? Public portion is closed.
All right, it's just the 2C variances for the house raise. The side yard setback on the Marshall Avenue side, staying the same, 3.52 feet's existing. And that's what's proposed, and 10 feet's required, and then building coverage, 35%'s proposed. That's also what's existing, but 30 is the permitted. The garage door setback's actually compliant, and just the standard conditions that we put in every resolution, and I'll note that Mr. Galantino wants a
We'll put
pretty in
four
detail,
street
whatever
trees in,
that
right?
is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the street trees, you'll comply with the street trees?
Yes.
Okay. 2 or 4?
4, 2 frontages.
Oh, yeah, 2 sides, gotcha. All right.
Make a motion.
I'll second.
Richard Patterson,
Well, once again, it's nice to see a modest house being improved with not a 7-bedroom, 7-bathroom house going in. And, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right across the street.
And I was given strict instructions before the meeting from your neighbors across the street that I had to vote yes on this, Christie and Eric. So, based on that, I vote yes on this application.
Michael Richmond,
Yeah, what's not to like? Raising a house, getting it out of the flood zone, the reconfiguring of the parking, right? I mean, it's a win-win situation. I see no detriment to the neighborhood or the neighbors or the city of Margate, so I'm going to vote yes.
Stephen Giesecke,
I see no detriments to this. I think it's a straight lift. I approve.
Margaret Gubernalty,
I see no negatives to the application. It's a straight lift. It's actually a benefit that they're backing up onto Marshall versus Huntington, which is a pretty busy street. And, I don't know, I live right down the street, and he's done nothing but improve that property since he's owned it, and this will be a further improvement, so I vote in favor.
John Pitts,
I agree with comments from the other members. I would like to see more of these home raises in Margate. I approve.
Can we see more skeletons at Halloween?
More stories.
Jim Galantino,
Yeah, I see this project's been since 2022, so it's about time we get this thing running. I vote yes.
Andrew Campbell,
I'm in favor as well. I vote yes.
Craig Palmisano.
I'm also in favor, and good luck, Kyle.
The application is approved with 8 in favor and none opposed.
All right, our next case is Ronald and Shari Raphael, 9408B Monmouth Avenue, Block 328, Lot 67.07, located in the multifamily
I
zone.
wasn't that, Jim. 328 Lot 67.07. 328 Lot 67.07. Located in the multifamily zone. 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 328 Lot 67.07. Located in the multifam
District seeking C variance relief along with possible amended site plan approval for overall site plan, minimum front yard, minimum side yard, and potentially others in order to install a new in-ground pool. Current on taxes, water and sewer payments, proof of advertising and notifications provided, represented by Eric Goldsey.
All right, I guess I'll lead us off. Thank you, board members. Mr. Chairman, the application of Ronald and Sherry Raphael, 9408B Monmouth Avenue, Block 328, Lot 67.07. Again, I want to point out the Lot 67.07 indicates that it was part of a subdivision. So there's a lot of history with this property. So the background is as follows. The applicant is seeking approval to construct a swimming pool in an area originally designated as a buffer when approved in 1983 as part of a major site plan, major subdivision application. Several conditions of approval from 1983 are in place that likely have not been met and therefore requires board action. The entire site was approved as one application originally back in 1979, then reaffirmed in 1983 when it went into bankruptcy, and then it came in front of the board again or via staff committee in 1994, which even then was indicated that the site should be viewed as one site, not just one element. So in essence, they need an amended site plan approval and a landscape coverage variance where 35% is required, and I believe they're at 29%, 21.4%. So the documents reviewed, there's voluminous, you can read my report, but again, there was a lot of research done on this. There was 3 plans reviewed: existing condition survey, survey of proposed minor subdivision from 1983, and 9408B Monmouth Avenue swimming pool plan by Jason Shulo, who's here tonight to provide testimony. So again, I guess one thing that this was originally presented as 16 units, then it went to 14 units, and it was subdivided to provide fee simple ownership. However, the conditions of the approval back in 1983 was the following. Owners Association will be formed and will exist in perpetuity, similar to a condominium association. As far as I know, that was never done. The public areas, driveways, etc., requiring emergency access shall never be improved with fences, walls, sheds, and will not be cluttered with vehicles and other temporary stored materials. I'm sure that's being abided by, because otherwise I'm sure we'd be getting a lot of phone calls. The Owners Association must have the power and compulsion to enforce these rules on each individual lot owner. The association must have the power to make improvements and assess individual lot owners. Number 5, there must be a mandated fund to cover the association's expenses for enforcing the covenants. The city must be convinced that the fund will be adequate and the owners will pay. The association, the city of Margate, other government bodies, and utility companies must have an acceptable easement and enter the public areas and make repairs. Again, the easements do exist. They are filed with the county, as shown on the original subdivision plan. Item number 7, each owner and the association must indemnify the city of Margate against any liability, financial or legal, resulting from necessary emergency repairs in the private driveway, some regarding the city's lack of responsibility for making repairs in private driveway areas. And the association must maintain all utilities. I don't know if all these conditions are met. Back in 1994, all 14 owners were required to appear in front of the board because these items were not addressed. As far as I can tell, it died on the vine. It was never approved or disapproved, but no action was sought. So again, it's overall landscape coverage requirement and an amended site plan. And again, this is the only property on the site that can have a pool out of 14 units. So I'm going to rest now with the right to comment later.
Mr. McLaurin, Eric Goldstein on behalf of the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Raphael, who are to my left here. Just by way of all the stuff you read into the record, it's a peculiar thing that Margate did over the course of time, and obviously none of you were involved in this because it goes back much, much longer than your tenure here. But when the city, through the planning board, required certain things to be done, for reasons unknown, they didn't enforce those things to be done. which raises the issue of municipal estoppel. The city can't now require Mr. and Mrs. Raphael to do the very thing that it waived over the course of 40-plus years. So when we talk about tonight's application, just like the application earlier with the flat roof, it really does rest in and of itself for this one lot. There's no association, there's no party to whom the Raphaels would be responsible, like a president or a overall body that the city can look to enforce the rules. And during the time, for whatever reason, we don't know, the city did nothing for 40-plus years and let the property operate the way it's been operating, and there really hasn't been anything done over the course of time. So just as we, talk about the application tonight, and when Jay puts his case on, Roger went through an association.
Eric, you got a second?
Yeah.
Everybody's going to get their chance to talk, so let's let Eric do his presentation, and we'll have comments from the board. And then the public will get a chance to speak. So let's not interrupt people, let them do their thing, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Richmond. So when we talk about what did or didn't happen, on numerous occasions, the city had the opportunity to take action and chose not to. And Roger pointed this out to me early on, that there was this staff committee going back 30-plus years from 94, based upon relief from the 83 conditions, and as he put it, just died on the vine. So the city has had an opportunity to enforce rules and regulations that it didn't enforce. You can't now look to that and say, well, we're going to enforce what didn't happen over the course of time that many years ago. The case still rises and falls on its own merits, which Jay is going to present, but the history of the case is important because the city has basically waived the ability to go forward with any sort of enforcement on things that it knew could have been going on. Most importantly, the failure of the association to properly become incorporated, that's now off the table. So please consider that when Jay's presenting his case. So right next to me, Mr. Shulo is going to get sworn in, going to put the case together. We're seeking one variance, which is the existing landscape coverage, which is already under landscape. And it's going to go, as Roger has in his report, from an overall of 23.3 to 21.4. Less than 2% of the entire site will be changed because of this. There is absolutely no reason to deny this application. This falls into everything that the city wants to see right now. Jay's going to explain why. I know we have some neighbors. I think they might be a little bit ill-informed about what we're trying to do. It's just a landscape coverage variance. That's it. If they went with the smaller pool, they went with the smaller above-ground pool, we're not here. Jay, please step up, get sworn, and let's have your qualifications put on the record.
Evening, everybody.
All right, Mr. Shulo, just give us your name and address for the record, please.
Sure, Jason Shulo, and the office is 137 South New York Avenue, Suite 2, Atlantic City.
And please raise your right hand. You swear affirm the testimony you'll give tonight will be the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Manis, Jay's testified here many times in the past. We just asked him to be qualified, both as an engineer and a planner.
We accept it.
Thank you.
All right, Jay? Let's get the mic.
Thank you. This one's really interesting, as Eric pointed out, and technically the relief that we're here for, to me, really isn't even necessarily relief in the form of a variance from the specific bulk standard as much as it is, I guess, the condition being interpreted more than anything. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So when we first got this application, or this project forwarded to us, there was no deed notice on the property that said that they couldn't do certain things. As he mentioned, there's no association. So standing on its own, the lot is fully conforming with, well, I shouldn't say that. There's existing nonconformities related to setbacks and things, but from a coverage perspective, a landscape perspective, it's fully conforming. And when we added in this proposed coverage with the pool, it was also conforming when the lot's on its own. And then speaking with Roger and getting information through the process, we found out about these 40-year-old conditions that were imposed but not necessarily enforced. And one of them that's interesting is, going through, I had a lot more written up, but I'm just going to hit the brief stuff because you guys covered a lot of it with the history. But the 1983 application and the minutes that Raj forwarded that are in his review, there were a couple things, aside from those 5 conditions or 6 conditions that he read in, that the applicant and their attorneys agreed to do. One of them was that they would, let me read it, that it will, and this is right out of verbatim, that it will not enlarge nor will it permit any future title holders to enlarge the existing units. So the choice of wording there is very important. That condition said the units getting larger, meaning with the buildings and the intensity of the use. That's why they went from 14 to 16, and things happened back then from what we can, recreate through the record. But there's no mention of, no more impervious cover or no flexibility on anything else being able to be done. So the legality of how this process is supposed to be undertaken is interesting. And that, like I mentioned, the lot is on its own, which is what it has to stand on, is fully conforming. But the relief needed, as mentioned, is to go, it's 483 square feet being added to the property. That, the relief is really just to, as mentioned from that previous condition, that it all be treated as one overall development, much like it could be, the entire block or whatever else, but this specific site plan. So I guess we're seeking that relief to deal with that one condition at the time of landscape coverage. So, aside from what Eric mentioned, I'm going to look at it from a planning principle, not just, the city doesn't have the right to enforce old stuff. From a planning perspective, we're going to look at what the real impact is and what this really means and the reason for this landscape coverage requirement. So, to me, and to be clear too, when the owner bought this, which, how long ago was that, 4 years ago? 2021, so called 3 years ago. It was during COVID. The intention was to buy a lot where you could put in a pool. His wife was injured in a car accident, or Mrs. Raphael was injured in a car accident. She can't walk through the beach or in the sand. She wanted a place to swim, so they wanted to get a pool. Wanted to go to Margate. They find this lot. They think that he can do it based on research of the information they had, which again, laymen don't know the same information that we all do. The realtor said it should be possible, take it for what it is, and they wanted to put in a pool. That's the reason they bought this lot. So when it came to us, and like I mentioned, we didn't see any restriction on it until Roger pointed out the history. I looked at it as, this is a challenge for sure because of this storied history, but it's not insurmountable. From a planning perspective, I want you to keep in mind that the reason for the minimum landscape coverage, I think there's 3 reasons for it. And the first is clear to make sure lots are attractive aesthetically and don't end up as like a sea of pavement. So it's really about the perception of the lot or what you see from the street. To soften the frontage and the edges of the properties where they interact with neighboring lots. And then to minimize stormwater runoff implications, which, from an engineering perspective, is obviously critically important. So for those 3 things, in this case, what I see is, this is interesting, and I'm going to point to this exhibit, which we created specific for this hearing. It's an aerial photo from Google with the proposed impervious cover highlighted in the cartoony colors. So you'll see that, the fee simple complex that was attached townhomes has the driveway that comes in off of Jefferson and turns out to Monmouth. And the end lot, 9408B, that we're talking about here is the one that has the yard next to it. It's tucked in behind this large condo building and this beautiful large home that fronts on Adams. The only thing that's visible from any surrounding property, from any surrounding roadway, I should say, is from the driveway opening on Monmouth looking in, and right now it's a fence. From the other properties, the back of the condo building is more or less right on top of the fence, and the side yard in this house here is relatively small. They don't use it as active area, but the portion of the lot visible, as I mentioned, from surrounding properties, it's large walls around it, and then this little bit of driveway opening. So from a attractive aesthetic perspective from the street, it's a fence, it's a landscape yard. It's not going to look any different than really what it does now. It won't detract from the aesthetics of the property or the neighborhood, and the applicant will landscape the yard beautifully to enhance that aesthetic appeal. There's no front yard landscaping visible from neighbors that will change. Everything that's around the frontages will stay. This applicant has no bearing bearing on what anyone else in the development does, or any of their landscaping, or any of the potential, I'll call it violations, not the right word, but work that may have taken place without proper approvals that Roger mentioned. Of course, it didn't happen on this lot. We have no control over what may have happened other places. The two large structures I mentioned, they don't have landscaping buffer on their side towards this lot. We will add some in. There's no usable yard areas for sure, not against the condo building. And then the larger house has the small one I mentioned. So for the softening the edges of the property where they interact, we will have landscape buffer that doesn't exist without this project. And then for the third one, for stormwater runoff implications, this one's always interesting with pools. As you can imagine, when rain falls on a pool, it goes in the pool, it doesn't leave the pool. There's freeboard in it. The only part that's going to have any potential runoff is a small area of sidewalk that wraps around the pool, which is about 250 square feet. It's almost immeasurable. So to me, we can certainly make sure that there's no runoff implications from installation of this additional coverage. And it certainly won't be directed towards neighboring properties. So for the reasoning behind the landscape coverage limits, I think we have no issue with this application as proposed. Aside from the technicality, we wouldn't really be here because we are conforming, and this is an open yard area that's going to remain an open yard area, just have a pool in it.
Jay, just because this is important, the distance from the water's edge of the pool to the area surrounding it, how far is that?
On the plan, I think it was 9 feet. Pull out the plan. Did I guess that right? You guys looking at it?
Yeah, 9 feet.
9 feet, yes.
And
the
if this
requirement
were-
is 6 feet, and we're at 9.
Let me ask you that. If this were a single-family house which had other requirements of zoning that were being met, the distance requirements from any structure, being the pool to the property line, is 6 feet. So we're 3 feet more than is otherwise required on a fee simple owned property.
Correct, and also put in perspective, the minimum side yard for a building is 8 feet. So we're at 9 feet with a pool. The building remains at almost 30 feet away. It's more than 3 times what's required by ordinance. So again, the yard area is preserved, just going to be utilized to its full potential by the landowner.
This is fairly important. We just stop Jay for a second. Under the doctrine of municipal estoppel, if we're looking at this solely as one lot, the distances on the pool comply. So we're not seeking a variance for that. The only reason we're pulled into coming here at all is whether or not we have to be a part of the overall site plan, which wasn't enforced by the city. And I'm going to defer to Leo on this, but if the city had this 40-plus year period more than that actually, from 79 on, to do something with regard to this development and didn't, really we should be here on the theory of this lot standing in and of itself on its own. It's not part of an association, and it should be. But the fact that the City of Margate and the Planning Board didn't enforce its own rules prevents all of you from looking at it as part of the bigger whole. It has to be seen as one lot. As one lot, we're good. So the question becomes whether you're going, and I think, Leo, we need a threshold determination here, whether the board's going to vote on this based upon it being a fee simple subdivided parcel which doesn't have any connection other than that it's attached to the neighbor next door to this overall whole. This is a legal question, not a factual question. So,
But if that's the case, then we don't have to vote on it, isn't that what you're saying?
well, that is correct, and we didn't want to argue with the city longer, but I think we need that determination. We didn't want to go to court. We're here because Raphael's are desirous to put their pool in, but they're putting a pool into what we would call defunct, never set up correctly association. They bought in 21. The association should have been set up in 79 or 83 or 94, and it was never done. So the question then becomes, under the municipal estoppel argument, are the purchasers good faith purchasers? Or did they have something to do with the problem that exists? Based on the dates, clearly they had nothing to do with the association or the development's failure to properly comply. Everybody else who owned in the property, potentially going back to 94 or earlier, should have been complying with the mandates of the city. They didn't do so, but the city asked them to come in, and for some reason, this whole thing, as Roger said, died on the vine. So as between the city, the existing non-compliant property owners, and the Raphaels, who are the newest ones, they're the only ones who had nothing to do with this issue. They bought a property with a large lot next to it for the purpose of putting in a pool. Fee simple, no association. They bought the property with title insurance. Yes, Jim?
9420 built a deck out in their little side yard on Jefferson Avenue. In fact, the two end units have decks. Didn't they change that all back then in 2010?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's not the history of this lot, so we don't know.
But they have the same situation on their lots. They have that big side yard.
Yeah, I mean, that again,
And
that
that
preceded us.
that was expansion of their residential unit.
So they would have done the very thing that some people are trying to prevent the Raphaels from doing, but this isn't touching the actual physical unit. This is taking a dirt lot and putting a pool in it.
Right.
I want to make it clear, too, that Roger taking the position he did and putting this out, we don't want to put it on Roger to make the decision to say this doesn't have to come in. So we understand why the comments came up. We don't disagree with the approach at all. We just, obviously want to get clarification.
Yeah, we're here because we want to clarify this, not because we want to argue. But we can't see any basis for the denial, and if it's amended site plan or whatever we're technically seeking. But this concept that this property owner is somehow not allowed to do what it wants on its own property, that no one else has an ownership interest in, is fairly significant. Had the owners of the other units, if they did what they were supposed to do, 79, so that would be
35.
no, it's more than that.
45.
45. He's the account.
No, you guys don't get to do math.
45 years ago, they could have done the right thing.
Man,
In '83, it was 40 years ago, 41 years ago, they could have done the right thing. Also in '94. And curiously, not only didn't the other property owners do anything, the city didn't do anything. So it's kind of like, don't ask, don't tell. But that can't adversely affect the Raphaels.
What's like the city or one of the owners supposed to do with a condition that talks about something in the future, the site's to be viewed as an entire site for any improvements? I can understand that with the homeowners association, they never formed that and all that other stuff, but there's a condition that says the site's to be viewed as an entirety that may or may not be a valid condition. But is our board in a position to just declare that condition null and void, and it's like if you have an ordinance that says something, a clearly unconstitutional ordinance, our board has to apply it, and if you don't agree, we might agree, this ordinance is unconstitutional, but that's what it says. Like, it's not our job to invalidate it. A court could. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm not suggesting that the application's necessarily bad or good. What I'm trying to determine is how should we view this?
So-
Should they need that variance?
Just curiously, Mr. Manos, I think you're referring to number B, where it said the applicant's attorney represented the following statement.
I don't know. I'm looking at Roger's report.
Yeah, that's in
now.
it's paragraph 4, subparagraph B, is that correct?
Big five. Represented the following.
No. You're talking about, we're looking at Roger's report?
Yeah.
I'm looking at number 6, that came back in, I guess, 1994.
The site was to be viewed as
Five.
entire-
Number 5, number 6.
Yeah, that was mentioned in the 1994 staff committee application. That the site,
Oh, it's just-
even after 15 years, you still got to look at the entire site as a whole. Otherwise, that's the problem with these fee simple projects. You have an area that's designed to be a buffer area. Now you're putting a pool in it. It was clear that it was a buffer area.
But it's also clear that there appear to be, 20 or more conditions that were placed in and around this development respectfully to the city, it can't cherry pick what it wants to enforce and not.
I'm sorry,
What-
can you repeat that? There was what?
There were all these conditions that were placed, like back to the
Sure.
1983 subdivision. But, for example, if an owners association was formed, we wouldn't be here because the owners would have the ability to take some action. So that wasn't done, okay? The association doesn't exist, which gets rid of a number of these other conditions. There wasn't a mandated fund for expenses, and there wasn't, other than Roger correctly pointing out, that some easements were filed as part of the subdivision plan. Most of what should have been done was never done. And the city had a chance over time to enforce its own requirements and didn't do so. So everybody who
Right,
has
but they never had a chance to enforce this one because nothing was, there hasn't been any improvements made
Well-
that we know of.
the decks, Mr. Meadows.
Okay, if there,
On the
well, if
other-
there was decks,
So on the, Jay, just show where the decks are put in. On Jefferson, there are some fairly large decks, and that area also has a couple of yards. So,
Yeah, there was parking added on the way. I mean, all looks great. It's just, the history is interesting to me.
Yeah, I couldn't find permits for a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, there you go.
Are the easements
right.
on any of
I don't
this
know how that,
parcel?
no. No, this is fee simple ownership, nothing interfering with, and I know where you're going, Mr. Patterson, there's nothing to stop this from being constructed.
Well, you just mentioned easements that are on the property. Does it
It's-
affect this particular
does
lot,
not,
or is
no,
it
the
the
easements are-
driveway?
Down here, and it's
Got
public
it.
right away.
All right.
Or for the driveway, yes.
So, the Raphaels, do they pay more for taxes for that lot than the other owners? Or is that all
The
shared?
improvement value is the same, but the lot area is larger, so in theory, they would pay a little bit more.
So that's a yes, there's more taxes being paid
Right,
because,
and they're responsible for maintaining that area with the landscaping?
Correct.
Or is that the whole association?
there is no
Well, there's no
association.
association, right.
So
they're-
they only
they own
plow.
They own that
their
lot,
lands.
they're paying more taxes, they're responsible for the maintenance, but if they want to do something like put a pool in, they're not talking about building a shed or doing whatever, or building more decks or adding to the property. And, as far as a buffer zone goes, what's a buffer zone?
They
I
didn't
mean,
wanna put-
why isn't a pool a buffer zone? You're not building a structure there, you still have the same airspace, it's an in-ground pool. And, what are you buffering against? A solid block wall that's, for a hotel that's been there for like probably 70 years with air conditioning units sticking out the back still? What's the,
The buffer, I think, was originally because they wanted 16 units, and they wanted an area, so they made 14 units and left that lot there. It's not a subdividable lot.
It's not, no.
No.
What else could be put on that lot?
You could put a structure there, I guess, if it was
If you wanted to
a
put
shed
something
or,
other than a pool.
correct.
Can't put an addition.
Can't put an addition, because it wouldn't make sense, Mr. Palmisano, either, but you could do something other than a pool. It's one lot. It's not an adjacent lot to the development, excuse me, Jay. This, in yellow, is everything that Mr. and Mrs. Raphael own, and none of the other members here have anything to do with this.
Although they share that right-of-way driveway for them to access their units,
They
correct?
come in here, and they,
Yep.
so this
The other way.
doesn't have any influence or impact on the other properties.
So
This
you
is
don't think that the right-of-way interferes with that piece at all?
Not where any of the yard area is, no, it's behind the fence.
Just an ask.
So,
Excuse me, could you flip that around so we could see the, just for a second, thank you.
You guys all right with that?
yeah.
So again, respectfully to all of you and the members of the public, everyone other than, what we're talking about now, have been grossly misinformed for 40-plus years as to this property. It's a fee simple owned property for the Raphaels. The other people who are in this development are no different than if you live in a cul-de-sac or on a city street or beach block or anywhere else, and you have a neighbor, they don't own your property and you don't own theirs. So if The history was different. The city did some enforcement. There was an association set up. And there's also a question, I don't know much about this, but the prior developer going bankrupt, potentially, if he filed a proof of claim, I mean, if he, whatever, the 7 or an 11, these conditions could have possibly gone away, even though they run with the land, if the bankrupt entity didn't exist after all of this work was supposed to have been done. So it's a giant mess, but that giant mess shouldn't have a negative on the Raphaels. Shouldn't really have a negative on anybody, because all they're trying to do, as Mr. Richmond said, is put in a pool. So,
Can I ask another question, and maybe, is it more advantageous to have a fee simple unit than like a condo or a, you know?
I think it's way more advantageous to have a condo because you have an association with rules and regulations, and you can't put grills there. But and there's so many things that the condo association does better, and a lot of times you'll see this, that to set up a condo association means you have to have an insurance policy to cover all of your roofs, and you have to have access and egress, and you have to have regulations about pets, what you can have, what you can't have. This is almost like a free-for-all. But this was developed.
Different.
What's that?
Every roof color is different, too.
Yeah. I mean, there's no uniformity here, other than the structures themselves. But if one of the units in the middle were somehow to be damaged or, there's no association to pay for it. There's no special assessments. Everyone's on their own, which, for some of the people who have been here a long time, that's kind of how Margate was developed. It was either, as Mr. Palmisano said, an old hotel or an old building that gets converted, or even if it's from the ground up, it's just, let's build this, and eventually things will get worked out. And in this case, it could have been worked out many times over, but it wasn't. So I just want to make sure that we're very clear on that. And Jay was in the middle of testifying before I cut him off.
Well,
so
it's just about the variance proofs if we need them, that's why I brought it up. So I can continue, it's up to the board.
I'd like to put the proofs on just as like a belt and suspenders, and I guess we can discuss with Leo the legal arguments.
Yeah, I would go through your testimony,
Yeah.
we'll let the public speak, and then we'll try and revisit this, but
What is, what's your concern on that?
the question is whether we view this as its own lot, or we look to some of the prior approvals, which suggest that anytime you make an improvement, you have to view the lot in its entirety, which case, that's what triggers the variance. As a standalone lot,
Fully
you're
conforming.
fully
For
conforming.
landscaping.
So if we were just looking at the applicant's fee simple lot,
Right,
testimony I'm hearing is that pool meets all requirements,
right.
and they really wouldn't need any variances. Based on Roger's research and all these documents, there's some suggestion in there that there's been various conditions, many of which have not been, clearly haven't been followed over the year, but there's something in, is it a staff committee meeting that says the site is to be viewed as an entire site with amended approvals, site plan approvals for any improvements, which the
Well,
suggestion
obviously,
is.
Right.
And
That
then-
hasn't happened, right, with the decks and all that stuff. There's been improvements that have.
Correct.
Yeah, so,
Well, yeah, and we don't know how those decks got there. I
And
don't
again,
know.
Mr. Manos, not to pick, respectfully, again, a staff committee is not a deed restriction or if condo docs were filed, they would have a survey attached, there'd be all the restrictions, an attorney or an applicant submitting a staff committee in, 1994 and 1983, that wasn't ever enforced. I would, again, respectfully say, I'm not sure it can be enforced. And if it could be enforced, I think that has to go to the governing body, not to the planning board. But we'll put our remaining proofs on so that.
And then these other homes, they're all paved in the rear yard? So they can dig them up, put grass and all, put.
Yeah, most of them are fully impervious now along the back.
Yeah.
There's no permits.
Jay, turn it around again.
They could grass those and put permits if they're conforming.
Each owner could do absolutely anything they want with regard to their property.
That's your position, and then, and if you view it as a whole, one person's improvement affects everyone else's. I mean, I know there's not much room to do anything there, but it's.
Really, I think, Leo, the only places you could do any improvements, one has been done on the end.
On the end.
To 2N units on Jefferson have been additionally improved, along with a fence. There are fences on both of these yards. Someone, prior to Mr. Raphael buying, and Mr. and Mrs. Raphael buying the property, fenced this in without any objection, so additional
was a permit for
improvements.
that.
What's that?
There was a permit for that fence.
Okay, so even better.
So each
They didn't
person
come
can
before the
fence
board.
off their little backyard, too,
Right.
I guess, right?
So you have a permit for a fence without coming to the board, which is in contravention of, I mean, look, a fence is an improvement. So that, number 6 says, site was to be viewed as an entire site with amended site approvals for any improvement. So no one came back and got additional site plan for this fence, for this fence, for this fence, for this deck, and for this lot area. All of that was done in contravention of what was supposed to have been done. None of the relief was sought. People just did what they wanted. So to now say the Raphaels can't do what they want because their potential improvement is different from a fence or a deck, what's the difference? Fence, deck, pool. All the other neighbors, not all the other neighbors, but many of the other neighbors have done it historically without coming here. But we're here. We're doing the very thing we should be doing, which is why we think we can make a good case for approvals. So with that,
And if it is viewed as a variance, you feel like you have the proofs to,
yeah, and I think, Leo, Jay's going to put those on
I think
there.
we should have them on the record.
Yeah,
just-
we should.
Leo, can I ask, if it's by itself, it meets the conditions?
I could
But-
approve this, right.
Huh?
I could approve it in the office.
Exactly. But you're saying the other thing is we look at it as a whole, so then we do have a landscape variance. Are you saying also if we look at it as a whole, that they need other property owners' approval?
No,
Or
I
you're
think
just
if
saying
we
that
look
we
at
have
it
to-
as a whole,
We just have to
then,
look at the
then in
landscape.
theory, whoever built, whatever they built on those end units, if they didn't get approvals, they're invalid. Anyone who wants to put a shed or anything, they have to come back before our board, if it affects anything.
No, but you're saying we would still just vote on,
We would still just vote
just on landscaping?
on landscape.
Okay.
I have a question. When this was originally built, those areas were to satisfy the landscaping requirement.
Correct.
Correct. Now, if this is the case and we do away with that land, that landscaping, then everybody else is way under
No,
their
it's less than
landscaping.
2%. Less than 2% difference.
But the other units, they don't have any landscaping. So they're all.
The other units are
But if you're
relying on
looking
that.
at it as a whole, like you're saying, then it's
Right.
less than 2%.
Then it's fine. But if it's not, if it's all fee ownership, then everybody else is out of compliance with landscaping, and we are way short.
I'm going to disagree with Mr. Giuseppe. I'm going to tell you why. If you look at it as a whole, it's a 2% difference. If you don't look at it as a whole, then each individual property was approved as part of the whole. Every single unit owner would have to come back and get a variance for what's been done after the fact, which of course they're not going to do, but that's what the city didn't do by enforcing this over the course of time. Mr. Patterson's correct. Is that? By not enforcing it. So the total landscape coverage presently, if you look at the entire site, and how this happened, we don't know, we weren't a part of it, is 23.3, okay? Where 35 would be required. Proposed is going to be 21.4, so it's a reduction in landscaping of 1.9 if you look at it as a whole. But we're going to make the argument first, and we're going to ask for a split vote on this, that you shouldn't look at it as a whole, because the lack of enforcement does create a municipal estoppel argument. However, if you do use it, look at it as a whole, and use the pool as the change in the landscape coverage, Jay's going to put on the testimony that, in his professional opinion, it still satisfies the variance requirement.
You're gonna ask for a split vote on what?
First would be whether or not this stands on its own. If it stands on its own, we don't need a variance and we leave. If it doesn't stand on its own, we need a variance, which Jay then, we believe, he can satisfy the criteria.
Do we have the ability to decide if it stands? We're not lawyers.
Well, I mean, that, That's my
Making-
concern.
Making that decision.
I mean, what I was gonna suggest is vote in reverse, vote on the variance first, and, maybe you convince the board that you satisfied it. We still have to hear from the neighbors. And,
Because the other alternative, Mr. Manos, would be to have Roger issue a formal zoning denial, appeal that denial to this board, because we have to exhaust our administrative remedies. If the board doesn't agree with us and agrees with Roger, then we would have to file a complaint prerogative writ to overturn the board's denial, sorry, the board's affirmation of Roger's denial.
no, I understand it. So the board has interpretation powers, and I guess it could come to us on, through the method Eric's suggesting. Or it's before us now, we have the prior history, the property, and our board, obviously, not the same members, but, our board in the past has set forth some of these things, and, one of our tasks is to interpret how we do this thing. But why don't you go through your
Sure.
testimony so we can hear from the neighbors?
And Leo, I think, I do agree that, I had it backwards, you're correct. The better way to do it would be to vote on the variance first, and then if, depending on the board's vote, we can make the argument that it shouldn't apply. But I think that's the safer way to go, because it also allows the board to retain jurisdiction. I think if the first vote, the other way around would be it stands on its own, the board at that point loses jurisdiction because we're not here on an application for, we'll let Jay
Right.
put his case on, okay? Why don't we talk about the positive and negative criteria, Mr. Shulo, and why we believe, notwithstanding everything else we've just been discussing, that this case
try to-
satisfies the standards as set forth in the municipal land use law and the City of Margate zoning code.
So I'll try to keep it brief, but for the
Well,
record.
don't be too brief, let's put a lot of testimony in.
I'll get it in. So this will be a bulk variance pursuant to NJSA 40:55D70C. And you'll recall that in that section of the municipal land use law, there are two ways that bulk variances get viewed. Under the C1 criteria, we generally call a hardship variance, saying that there's unique character of the lot, in this case, the history, whatever. And then C2 variance, we lovingly term the flexible C, but generally they would show the benefits of granting relief will substantially outweigh any potential detriment. So, that's the positive criteria. For the negative criteria, we also have to show that the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and will not substantially impair the spirit, purpose, or intent of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. That's the negative criteria, both prongs. So, for the positive criteria, it's interesting. We talked about, a little bit of hardship and not knowing the history, but we beat that pretty good, so I'm gonna leave that be. So, I think this could be treated as a C2 or flexible C variance, where the benefits will outweigh potential detriment. A couple benefits to granting relief. First, there's obviously benefit to the applicant for being able to utilize their yard. Adds value to the property, incentivizes them to create a benefit to the neighbors by enhancing the landscape buffer plantings against those neighboring parcels, which is the public benefit. The pool's proposed location that's farther from lot lines and required by ordinance, which we talked about. It's modest in size, it's only 10 by 20, it's one of the smaller pools you can get. And between the size of the pool, location of the pool, it won't overwhelm the space. And it gives them the ability, again, to create buffer plantings for that public benefit. And again, to put it in the record, the total increase in impervious surface is 484 square feet. It's minimal.
And Jay, this is important, because if we're gonna look at it as part of the overall whole, 484 square feet, what is that compared to the overall project? I hate to put you on the spot with math, but.
Well, we have it in the table, so the overall lot is,
No,
well,
not
no,
this
that's
lot.
just our lot, yeah. Well, it ends up being 2% of the allowable coverage, so it's 2% of the lot. It's 1.9% technically.
So the calculation of what we're seeking here is 1.9% of the overall
No,
project.
it's less, I'm sorry, it's 1.9% over what's permitted, but it's much less than that than the overall lot.
Okay, so would it be fair to say that that would be a significant de minimis impact on everything that makes up the entire block? Because the lots themselves are individual, 9421, 9414B. That is part of the overall whole, but this little piece of pool is a smaller version of what's in the overall whole, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Correct. So, aside from those, practical,
So we can call that, I would say, you testify and I'll ask the question, a de minimis deviation from what else is going on at this lot.
yeah, the reality is, had we not, well, I'm gonna say, it's gonna sound gruff when I say it, but had we just built a pool and no one knew the difference, you'd never know the difference. That's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
I feel that multiple purposes of zoning, as enumerated at NJSA 40:55D2, which is the purposes of the law, municipal land use law advanced. The first is purpose A, to promote the general welfare. Use is permitted. The inclusion of a swimming pool and additional buffer plantings enhances both the property and lessens visual impact to neighboring properties, so that purpose is advanced. Purpose C, to provide adequate light, air, and open space, as mentioned, I think, in some of the conversation. It's not a building. The yard stays the same. It's going to look the same. The little bit of coverage that's there is a minimal amount of impact. And of course, we can design to make sure it doesn't impact neighbors through runoff or any kind of issues with grading. And again, the building itself remains more than triple the distance required by ordinance, so I think this purpose is advanced. Purpose I, to provide a desirable visual environment. Again, the additional landscape buffering will advance that purpose. Now, for the negative criteria, there are two prongs, as I mentioned. The first is demonstrate the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good. The focus of this prong has been held by the courts to be the impact to the immediately surrounding area, the neighboring properties. I talked about already that no negative impact due to the additional landscape buffer, which again, there's none on the neighbor to the west, and there's small yard, the neighbor to the north, and of course, we'll be able to buffer, or plant buffer plantings within those areas to shield from view anything that's on our property versus theirs.
So this is pretty important too, because the board, of course, and certain board members are always concerned about landscaping, as we all are. Right now, the lot's fairly barren.
There's a couple pine trees that are up against the back of the condo building.
And as part of this proposal, additional bufferings are being proposed so that what's there now will be replaced with new, better landscaping that will shield the pool from the neighboring property.
That's the intent, yes.
Okay. So even though you're giving up, ladies and gentlemen, portions of the lot for the pool, you're gaining new plantings that aren't just low dirt type, small scrubs inside of a fence.
Well,
The plantings will be
yeah.
higher than the fence.
And I want to put it in perspective too, and this is a good image for it. You can see the pools that are up behind the building up here. They're probably compliant. You're allowed to be 6 feet away from the property line with the pool, and then the walkway patio around it is between 4 and 6 feet. So they pretty much pave right to the lot lines. We're not proposing that. We could put the pool closer by ordinance, but the intention was to pull it away from the lot line to be able to put that landscaping in. So it's thoughtfully designed for that purpose.
And we did that thinking we needed the variance and knowing that the board considers the plantings to be such an important aspect of development in Margate.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have a whole lot, so it's helpful to take what's now just open lawn and make it, valuable buffer plantings. The second prong of the negative criteria is to demonstrate granting of relief will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. This one's really interesting, because technically, this doesn't violate the ordinance. The ordinance says what it says for this lot, we're compliant. We're technically, again, asking for relief to the standard when it's applied to the entire lot, which is really a condition of the previous approval that wasn't enforced properly and then was created through staff meetings that weren't formal action. It's muddy. But in the end, I feel that when the lot obviously is evaluated on its own, it's fully compliant, so it complies with the intent of the ordinance. And then I mentioned the intent of the conditions of the prior approval, one of which is, very important in the choice of the words, is the specific statement that the units will not be increased in size. Again, we're not increasing the size of the unit. And, the position, Raj, you mentioned, that landscape area there was created for buffer against the neighboring uses. Well, it's effective buffer the way we're going to do it now. It's going to be planted, it's going to function in that capacity. The way it sits today, it's just open lawn, and there was no requirement during that formal site plan back in 1979, 1983 to have more plantings than this. So I feel it's completely meeting the spirit, purpose, and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, because it is fully compliant. So again, it's my professional opinion that this board has, I think, what it needs to be able to approve this based on the planning merits. You know, and but for that odd situation from 40 years ago, we really wouldn't need to be here.
And what I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, if I could, is pass around to the board members the actual deed that the Raphaels obtained when they bought the property. The reason this is important is if a deed references prior approvals or prior recordings of any type, it shows up in the recital language in the deed. The deed itself, which is from August 24th of 21, contains no reference at all to any prior development, any prior subdivision, anything having to do with a restriction on the property, period.
How about in the title report, nothing?
Nothing. The deed itself, and I have the title report as well, says, I'm just going to read it into the record. It's got the seller, John DeLaGuardia and Colette DeLaGuardia, and the price of the property at the time. And then it says, being the same land and premises granted and conveyed to John R. DeLaGuardia and M. Colette A. DeLaGuardia, husband and wife, by deed from Bernard Lipton and Shirley Lipton, married to each other, dated October 21st, 1994, recorded October 25th, 1994, in the Atlantic County Clerk's Office. There is no reference to anything else. I'm going to hand this to Mr. Giesecke. And I don't think we have to have this marked as an exhibit, Mr. Manos, because it's a public record, but the board can take a look to see that this isn't a situation that the Raphaels could have even been aware of, but for submitting a pool application to Roger, because nothing is on record, period. Jay's put on the proofs as to the positive and negative. If it's its own lot, we don't need to be here. If it's part of an overall bigger lot, we satisfy the proofs for the variance. We're going to press pause and take,
Who maintains that driveway?
I think anybody does.
But it's a common area for all those owners.
The driveway,
Yeah,
correct.
so if it were to,
Snow.
if it were to sink in, they couldn't, because something happens with the pool, it sinks entering into it. They'd all have to get together to pay for the repair of that driveway,
I'm not sure they would,
which is why I look at it as a whole.
okay? And that's okay, but let's say, excuse me, Jay, what happens if this unit's roof caves in and two units are on both sides of it? The two units on the other sides have their own insurance, their own repair costs. It's no one's fault. The developer made giant errors and didn't do what the developer was supposed to do.
They made it fee simple because then they wouldn't have to go to the expense of creating a
Maybe, right.
condominium.
Which, as we know, is not that easy.
That was kind of the point I was trying to make, you know, I mean, like you said, a condo would be way better, but financially, it's probably better to have fee simple, is that correct?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Richmond, at the time, it was more expensive to file the condo documents, to set up the association, to manage the association. The association then needs insurance, it needs errors and omissions for the directors and the owners. It's a much more difficult way to run it, but it's way better because now you have who's responsible for the road, who's responsible for the landscaping, who's responsible for the decks that were put on, who's responsible for the fence around the other side.
Remember Atlantic Avenue, those townhouses, they wanted
to do the same thing.
They wanted to uncreate the condo, didn't they? Or,
They want to make it fee simple.
right, and we said no.
But we don't do it
Yeah,
anymore.
but
It used to be done, but we don't do it anymore.
And, you know,
And you could have
wouldn't
fee
do
simple
the
with a
same
homeowners
thing.
association, which you're still governed.
I mean, personally speaking, I've put in many pools, and I never saw a pool that sunk and
Well, I
Disturb the road.
understand. I
So-
don't,
no.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to rest, we have the, reserve the right to put Mr. Shulo back on, or the property owners, or to discuss the legal merits with Mr. Manos, but I'm sure some members of the public have some things to say. Listen.
I'll call the deed Exhibit A, just for the record.
Anybody from the board? Anything else? Okay, public portion's open. When you come up, you have to get sworn in.
give us your name and address, and I have to swear you in, and then you can speak.
Andrea Staffen, 9410B Monmouth,
Okay, Ms. Sapp,
where your unit is, I wanna,
right next door.
She needs to be sworn in.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Sapp, and please raise your right hand. You swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes,
And you're right next.
right next door.
Next to the owner who
Right.
owns the lot.
Yes. And I like them a lot. This is nothing personal. So I live at 9410B Monmouth, right next door. We've owned there for 10 years. We're in a row of townhouses, so my house is attached directly to their house. I have two concerns about the installation of the pool. Flooding and drainage is one. During rainstorms, we already have a flooding and drainage problem. During any heavy rain, there's a lot of ponding and flooding in the common driveway in back of my house, the Raphael's house, and the houses on the opposite side of my driveway. Often, but not always, it's flooding that's backed up the driveway from Monmouth Avenue and the intersections of Monmouth, Adams, and Monmouth and Jefferson. I have a dog. When I need to walk my dog in a rainstorm, I already need to wear my high rain boots, carry my little dog through the driveway to get past the flooding, to get to the unflooded part of the sidewalk on Monmouth. So I'm worried if there's a pool and less grassy surface to absorb rainwater, where will all the excess rainwater go? Also, when it rains, I don't know, will the pool overflow with the rainwater, or even when it's covered, won't there be excess rainwater that runs off? In addition, when a pool needs to be drained, where will it go? The prior owners of the Raphael's house told us when we bought our house, they had water and drainage issues without rain, in the yard where the pool would go, and in their garage. I don't know if they resolved these issues or not. They just frequently asked us if we had water in our garage. We didn't. So the bottom line is, my first concern is whether this pool will cause an already existing water and drainage problem in the driveway and make it even worse. My second concern is construction and installation. The disruption that will occur during construction and installation of the pool. Our row of townhouses, including the Raphaels, is not on Monmouth or any street. The only access for vehicles to the yard where the pool will be built is the common driveway in the back of both rows of our houses. That driveway has two entrances, one from Monmouth and one from Jefferson. There is a common walkway in the front of our row of houses, but that's only for pedestrian access. So where will the construction trucks and the equipment park? If they have to dig, where will all the dirt be piled up? I'm concerned that the entrance near our end will need to be totally blocked with trucks, equipment, dirt, etc. It would be a mess and a major disruption to our use of our driveway and our garage. So these are my two concerns with the installation of the pool. Again, I want to say, I like them a lot. They're really good neighbors. This is nothing personal. This is just, I'm concerned on how it affects my house. Thank you.
A couple questions. Is your backyard paved?
I don't really have a backyard, the driveway. I have no
Oh,
backyard.
you don't have a backyard?
It's the garage and the driveway. I don't have a backyard. I have no grass. Nobody has grass except the end.
The
that's-
pavers in the front of your
We
property.
have pavers in the front.
Right, so, if you wanted to do something about water percolation, you could take out the pavers. The other thing is,
But the
did you?
pavers are in the front. That's not where water pools.
Oh, okay.
The pool's in the driveway in the back.
When you
I don't have
bought your-
pavers in the driveway. It doesn't have pavers in the front.
When you
patio.
bought your property, did you do any investigating? Because that's a historically flooding area. I lived on Adams and right near Bender Avenue, and I mean, just from floods, my wife lost her car. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, well, I'm not concerned about the street. I'm just saying that floods right in the back of our driveway.
the whole area floods.
Maybe the driveways aren't pitch drained to drain to the streets.
I just know what happens when it rains and when I need to walk my dog, and if there's less grass to absorb rain, it's gonna be more flooding in the driveway.
Thank you.
A question for you before you go?
Yeah.
Are you there in the winter if there's snow? Who plows and who,
We try to do our own.
your own? Okay, thank you.
Where's the guy on the ends up there?
You guys stay awake. I'm sorry. It's rough.
My name is Mark Cohen. I reside at 119 North Jefferson, Unit D, with my wife Karen. I just wanted to show you.
Mr. Cohen,
Oh,
you swear that from the testimony you'll give will be the truth?
I do.
Great, thank
I
you.
feel like I'm getting married again. This is great. Our property on the map is right here in this corner. The Raphaels are about 30 yards away to where the pool construction is going to be. Can you hear me? I have a pretty loud voice. Our
Yes, just
experience.
stay into the microphone
Yeah,
for the record.
my experience with pools has been extremely negative. Our neighbors at 117 North Jefferson, which is here behind us, they constructed a pool 7 years ago without prior knowledge. Either I didn't get the certified letter, they probably sent out the letter when we weren't there or not in the country, but I never protested this.
Excuse me.
We arrived one weekend and found tons of dirt literally piled against our building. I called the police department. They had to come and tell the people that were excavating to move the dirt, which they did within a couple weeks. And after that, we had drainage issues which took years to resolve. But worse than that was the continual noise that was generated by these neighbors, not these. All through the day and night, they would have pool parties and they would have kids literally in the pool at 2 in the morning, no matter what we did. So it sort of soured me on the pool experience. Again, Ron and Cherry have been good neighbors, but the noise on their property resonates through this whole area. It's almost like an echo chamber. Ron has an outdoor TV. He likes to play his music loudly. He tells me he's hard of hearing. I agree with him. And, and anytime I ask him to turn it down, he does. Our neighbors at the C unit, the Magners, would have been here today, but they have a lot of health issues. Now, Ron likes his music. He likes his TV. He's been responsive. But our main concern is when he puts in a pool, the noise that will be generated from family, guests, children, music, TV, it's just going to be magnified tremendously. Then we'd be surrounded by a pool here, which keeps us up at night, a pool here, which will probably keep us up during the day, and this has really impacted our quality of life. This was supposed to be our retirement haven, but our quality of life has been negatively impacted by the noise pollution generated by swimming pools. In addition, on Adams Avenue, on the 100 block, there are 2 other pools. We can't hear them, luckily acoustically. For these grounds, we personally oppose the construction. Thank you. I give the rest of my time to my other neighbor. Okay. Thank you.
Can I make a comment about that? And I absolutely
Sure.
understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And this board has a lot of powers, and we don't have a lot of powers. And one of the problems is we have no power over rudeness of neighbors.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not like, well, we can consider that they're rude, so we can turn this up or down. And that's really ties our hands. But
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
But just appreciate the
it's-
issue. It is 270 degrees
I
of
understand.
noise, sometimes continually. Thank you.
My name is Fred Marcaldo. I live on 9420B Monmouth Avenue. It's the same row as Ron, Joe.
Markello? It's Markello?
Marcaldo, that's correct.
Okay. Please raise your right hand. You swear affirm the testimony you'll give will be the truth?
I would.
Okay, thank you.
The issue is that, yes, I think they are individual properties. I mean, we all pay different taxes. We all have to get insurance for what they said we don't have insurance for. So every property has insurance. Secondly, even though it is individual properties, it was built as a single unit. And because of that, there are certain commonalities. And that one commonality is a sewer line that runs right down under our crawl space. So anything generated up at Ron's property flows down under my right through my house. You can actually see the pipe. So I'm concerned about that. If anything goes wrong with that pipe, all of us are on the hook for a lot of money. And pools generally, they back flush them, what I understand, every couple of weeks or whatever. So a lot more water's coming down that pipe. No? Okay, I don't know.
No, I
I know
do.
they back flush them.
No, that's not true.
Oh, okay.
Not what, that used to be the case, but.
Okay.
No, I had a pool, it was a saltwater pool, there was no chlorine, there was no, never any flushing of anything outside of within the pool itself.
But the
And that's
pool-
pretty much the same
Does the
with the
pool
pools today.
drain through the common sewer line that runs in the house?
The pool doesn't drain anywhere. If they wanted to drain the pool, they have to suck the water out of the pool.
Pump it out?
Yes,
And then it's pumped down the street into the sewer?
I don't know. Yes. If they emptied the pool, you usually don't empty pools.
Yeah, well, there are reasons you empty pools.
No, you don't empty an in-ground pool, especially in that
Especially on the
location,
island.
because the
Okay.
water will make the pool pop
Yeah,
out
it
of
would,
the
if
ground.
the hydrostatic
Yeah,
pressure,
right.
that's the other issue with that pool. As they mentioned that that property had flooding, had drainage problems. They actually had a sump pump there, the other owner, which I don't know, apparently they don't have anymore. They must have fixed it. But that property used to have a sump pump. So the hydrostatic pressure probably is pretty,
Right,
quite a bit on that pool.
right.
So I would question that. Secondly, I saw, they said there's some grading that needs to be done between the one property and the other because it's so much lower. Now, if it's so much lower, I'm gonna grade which way? We got enough water running down our driveway plus our walkway. I mean, you can't walk on our walkway. It's raining, so much water flowing down there. So there are the issues.
Are you on the N unit? You're the N unit?
I'm sorry, I have.
Are you the N unit? You're the N unit on Jefferson?
I'm the end unit. That's-
So you have the deck?
Yes, I do. It was there when I bought the house.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Good answer.
There's the answer.
Anything else?
No, I think that's it. Thank you very much. And I'd like to apologize to you for a minute because I did say something, and because of being hard of hearing, I didn't realize it was that loud. Please excuse me.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
It was my honor.
Anyone else from the public? Okay, public portion's closed. Any other comments from the board? Okay.
Just one. They said there's a fence already there. Well, the fence is only 4 feet. That would have to be a 5-foot fence if the pool is approved or not. 5 or 6 foot. Could be 5
Maybe
foot.
5 or 6.
Maybe
Could be
5
5 or 6 foot. It's a 4-foot fence on the property now.
Correct.
Would you have a gate?
We'd have to get into it somehow, so I assume,
Be fully compliant.
yeah, it would be, as Roger said, whatever was approved would be fully compliant with your pool ordinance. I just want to address some of the comments by some of the neighbors. I'm going to try to be brief here. The concept of a future prospective noisy neighbor is not something that this board can consider. The idea that because someone's building a pool, they're going to have parties, they're going to have people over. We're not seeking a pool variance. If the pool were small enough, I suppose they could put it in, they could put an above-ground pool every week and flop around in it and couldn't do anything about it. The idea that this is going to be some noisy, poorly managed property because someone in town has a property near another neighbor and they're loud is completely irrelevant, and it's hearsay. Because if that were the case, we wouldn't have Amherst Avenue, and we wouldn't have Boca, we wouldn't have anything that makes any noise. We wouldn't allow new businesses to come in, and you wouldn't have a pool ordinance allowing pools. And in the master plan, it would say, we don't like pools because they're noisy and they annoy the neighbors. The governing body has passed ordinances allowing for pools. The concept that they're going to be obnoxiously loud isn't something, respectfully to the neighbors, that you're even permitted to consider. So what do we have now? We've got the pro and the con that Jay put on for the municipal land use law, the variance proofs that are necessary. We've heard nothing to contravene any of that. We've got some neighbors who are concerned about flooding, but the pool itself will not cause more flooding. The sewer line's not going to have the pool draining into it. With respect to the neighbors, they are 100% wrong. Their reasons for objecting have zero basis in fact. And I think what happens is you get a lot of these neighbors that come together, and it's like a conspiracy theory that we're going to say this or we're going to say that. None of it is relevant to the proofs that have been put on. So I think the case has been put on correctly. Don't think we need a variance because we think we satisfy the fee simple ownership, but we're going to submit to the board that we can prove the variance, and there's been no proofs to the contrary that the variance shouldn't be granted. And with that, we would rest, subject, of course, if the board has any further questions.
So, Jason, if you guys are approved, you'll have a grading plan submitted?
And just being frank, if we didn't want to go through the expense in the event that this wasn't received
Right.
favorably. So yeah, we will, as a condition of approval,
Right, as a condition of approval, right.
we provide a grading plan. And I assume there's going to be a grading plan review as part of the pool permit process anyway, so.
Right.
Yeah,
And
it'll be part of that.
also for the neighbors, construction isn't beginning this year. If this is granted, they don't want to start this until probably in the fall. So presumably it'll be easier to get, it'll be less annoying to the neighbors. And more importantly, in the fall, it'll be easier to get, construction equipment back there. I've never seen a city that enforces its ordinances more than Margate. Mr. Vada's going to be over here on day one paying attention to this. No one gets away with anything. If the construction's not clean, they're going to be cited. If something breaks, the Raphaels are going to have to clean it up. So again, this idea that we don't want a pool because it will damage our property or because it will be noisy, those are just not reasons to consider. So having said all of that again, we're going to comply with the ordinance, comply with the pool ordinance, comply with construction. It's not being built this year. Grading plan, we've given you everything you want. We don't think we need to be here, but we're here, so we'll rest with that.
The one variance is landscape at 1.9%, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Palmer said.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
1.9%?
So the issue is, and frankly, I don't think a judge could decide some of these things on the spot, but in any event, I read everything, but this was initially approved, when it was approved as fee simple ownership. The idea back then was would be some type of homeowners association, and then if you want to put an addition or you want to do anything, you get whatever percentage of the owners, and you come before, if it's compliant or not compliant, you go forward. That was never done, so that's pretty clear, and everyone's kind of, there seems to be some evidence that there was some decks built on other homes, whether there was permits for those or not, we don't know. So that wasn't done, and now the applicant has a standalone lot, and the question becomes, whether we still look at this as an overall site in which a variance is required, or we look at it as a standalone lot. My inclination, and I'm open for some discussion, is for argument's sake purposes only, we'll assume it's a variance and we'll look at it as an overall site. We'll take a vote on it. If the board approves it, then it's approved, and we might have to look at what we can do as a board, if anything, or even the homeowners can do amongst themselves to, it doesn't, this property doesn't suggest something that this is going to be a reoccurring thing. I don't think, unless someone buys 3 of the properties and wants to build a elevated home with a second store, or something like that.
You raise an interesting question, Mr. Manos, and I know the city's dealt with this on Coolidge Avenue and the beach. Without an association, if someone bought 3 or 4 of these and wanted to tear them down, they could. So it's, the developer who did this should have put the association together. They did
That
it.
we all agree on,
Yeah,
I think.
but it shouldn't really
It
impact
wasn't
the
done.
Right.
And if you look at that property as a standalone property, they wouldn't even need to be here.
Just, the original minor subdivision, the entire site was approved as one building, 14 apartments. The minor subdivision that's included is for a little strip of land to add area to the lot to make it fully compliant with 25,000 square feet. In 1983, when the bank took over the bankruptcy, that's when they did the major subdivision to make them all fee simple townhomes so they could sell it off
And get their
and
money
recoup the money. As a condition of approval of that, the homeowners association was supposed to be created to prevent, in my opinion, because we've seen it in other locations, bastardization of the site. Simple as that. That's
Right, and I don't disagree with that. The question is,
But it's not
How-
just the developer's problem. Property owners ignored the demands of the city for 40 years, so there has to be some culpability there, too.
Maybe they
Right.
didn't through the years, maybe they initially started one, but then.
but if it was in
They didn't.
bankruptcy, I don't know.
Nothing was ever done. There's no maybe here. Nothing was done.
the letter in 1994 from Andrew Miller, who represented the homeownership, said when the bank sold all these lots, or homeowners had no idea. So, I mean, there's a lot of finger pointing to go around, but here we are.
But Leo, let's talk about, you said a judge couldn't decide this. Let's look at a case that went to the appellate division, which is Coolidge and the Beach. That was an attached unit. That's now a standalone and was built, and it was an end unit very similar to this. So we're almost in the same situation where once you have your property and it's fee simple, there's a certain very American process of property ownership that cannot be messed with, and they did have an association.
I thought that was elevated,
They were denied to tear it down and build a single-family home, which is contrary to what you're saying.
No, but they were able to raise it. The neighbors didn't
Raise.
want them to raise it.
Right.
The court in that case said, yeah, well, there was a homeowners association there, and they said,
Right.
under these homeowners, this is sort of a different issue. In that case, that was the homeowners, the court said, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, that the homeowners association can absolutely prohibit them building a single-family home. This was meant to be a row home type of
That was one
development.
of you-
However,
one unit.
under the Sandy law, they can take that end unit and raise it, and you can't stop them under
Right,
the
the homeowners association existed,
Yeah,
and they were
did
still
that.
allowed to
So,
raise it.
yeah, and that's,
Right.
Yeah.
that's a,
And there is no homeowners association.
Right, so and here that we don't have one, so
Right.
I think it even
So-
bodes better.
Okay.
The property.
so I guess there's the ways we can do this. We can look at it and vote as a C variance, see what happens, might make other issues moot. Or if the board wants to try and interpret this and say, that ship has sailed and we think we should view this as one property, we can go that angle and take a vote on that.
I think we should look at it as a variance and get it out of the way. I think we're postponing problems if we do it the other way.
I think we should look at it as a variance initially. We'll take a vote, reserving your argument, and then depending on how that happens, what's your timeline? You trying to get this thing built? I mean, I might need to say I got to do a little research
No,
on that
so
other issue if we get to that issue.
Why don't we try this, and then this is kind of a little bit of an offshoot there. We're here, so we've submitted to the board's jurisdiction. The board has jurisdiction to vote regardless. If the board votes in the affirmative, we would still want Mr. and Mrs. Raphael to retain the ability to challenge the zoning officer's decision, not to come back here, but to go to Superior Court. Because technically, when Roger denied the application for the pool, it was, something we're appealing by way of the variance. So if the board doesn't vote yes, then we have the right to challenge. But I would just say, we shouldn't have to come back and challenge, because we just did this for the past hour and a half or so. We'd probably go right to Superior Court. So we would look at this either as the variance application or a challenge to the zoning officer's administrative decision. But we still reserve the right to say that this is one lot. We're not giving up that right.
I think I understood what you're saying. So if you're not
I'm not
approved,
saying it again.
if you're not approved, you don't want to have to submit an application that's just going to get denied, appeal it here, because we've kind of gone through that
Correct.
exercise. That's
Yeah.
fair.
So basically, this would be the process of exhausting our administrative remedies under the municipal land use law. But if it's approved, then presumably we'd be able to build. But in the meantime, if we didn't want to, I don't know why we would do this, but if we didn't want to use the variance, but rather wanted to use it as the standalone lot, we'd have the right still to go to court and have that adjudication by the judge. But I don't think the Raphaels want to do that, because they'd already have the approval in hand.
Right.
All
Okay.
right, that's all.
So we'll vote on it as the variance, and I guess it technically amends the overall site plan too. If approved, they'll submit a grading plan to be approved by Roger. So the variance is, looking at the site overall, 35% lot coverage is required. They have 23.3%. The pool takes it down to 21.4%, which is, I don't know, 2%, 1.9%. So that's the only variance they're asking for. The side yard, the pool, as far as setbacks and stuff, is compliant. So we need a motion and a second and a roll call vote.
Second.
Richard Patterson,
Well, I'm glad we didn't have to decide whether it needs a variance or not. I just don't feel capable of making that decision, so I'll look at it as if they do need the variance. But I have to look at it as a pool. It is much more compliant or overly compliant than 90% of the pools that we get. They will have landscaping, which will probably be arborvitaes or whatever along both sides of the thing, which will completely block out any sights and some of the sound from the pool. I have to vote yes on this application.
Michael Richmond,
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Patterson. It's their property. It's a 1.9 landscaping variance is very de minimis. It's gonna, I mean, you see what the property looks like now with the landscaping and everything. I think it'll be an improvement to the area, so I'm gonna vote yes.
Stephen Giesecke,
I'm thinking that the pools, you can use a smaller pool in there. My concern is that we are at sea level, and flooding is a serious issue. And I think we need to get as much land, keep as much land in Margate as we can. By putting a 10 by 20 foot pool in there, it's 200 square feet. We're looking probably like about really 1,000 cubic feet when you include the hardscaping and the depth of the pool, because it's like putting a brick in a bucket. You're raising the sea level, you're raising the level. I think it's something that we seriously need to look at in Margate about this, the amount of pools that we're putting into this town. We have all kinds of ordinances that are coming through. We've got tree ordinance coming through. We have a enhanced stormwater ordinance that has to be addressed, coming down from the state to alleviate these problems. I vote no.
Margaret Gubernalty,
I realize the landscape coverage is de minimis, but it is a variance. The fact that it's fee simple, which means that you own the land without any limitations and can do what you want with your land, although, in my eyes, they're sharing common rights of a public area. And I know you don't want me to go back to 83 and if it was a entire property or not. I see it as not a public benefit, and I have to deny the application.
I'm just going to interrupt, and I don't do this often, but you made a statement of fact that is 100% incorrect, that they share anything common. The road is the only thing that's common, and you heard the neighbors say they each shovel their own. So if that's what you're basing your decision on, I'm going to respectfully say that is an incorrect statement of fact and law. But you're entitled to your opinion.
Well, then I am denying it based upon the landscape coverage being under.
John Pitts.
In Margate, we need to do everything we can to keep and even expand on permeable surface. We heard testimony from some of the neighbors about flooding in the area and flooding specifically on that property. It's not a 2%. Currently, the site is already at 12% under the landscape coverage. It'll be going to 14%. I deny.
Jim Galantino.
So when the two neighbors on each end of Jefferson Avenue built their decks, did they come to the board for variance? They changed, if anything, they changed the land use of the build of that site then. Because it should have come to us to grant the variance for those decks. Hopefully, the property owners aren't excessive with those decks. The corner property is fenced off and it's separated from the rest of the properties. There is no way from any other property owner to access that property. So, and to me, the property owner has identified that property as their own. The lot as it stands right now is not very good. It's just weeds, and it's not a nice lot. For them to improve the lot, they're going to do improvements to the lot to benefit, hopefully, the neighborhood. In that case, I am voting yes.
Andrew Campbell.
I struggle with this, these pools and things, but I also understand that it is a standalone property, and you can do what you want with that. You don't need rain in this town. You only need a high tide and a northeast wind to flood. So my feeling is that it's going to improve the property. The landscape is going to help buffer some of that noise. And I'm going to vote yes.
Craig Palmisano.
I agree with Mr. Galantino here and about the improvement of the property. And it is a fee simple, and you own both pieces of property there. I look at the picture of the buffer zone up against an old motel unit that doesn't mean anything to me. This buffer zone, it looks like crap. It really does. I think a pool is really going to improve the property, and it's your property, and it's beneficial to you and the community. And I'm going to say the pool fits. Unlike a lot of other pools here, it fits, and you've done a nice job with that. And the extra landscaping around it will be more of a buffer. And I'm going to say yes to it.
The application is approved with 5 in favor and 3 opposed.
Yeah. What have we done? What were we done if it? Yeah, that's what I was looking at. So I agree. It is.
Yeah, you're the tiebreaker.
Sure.
I think he conceded. The only thing they share is the drive.
Sure.
Okay, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. All right, our last case is Gregory and Rachel Georges, 206 North Decatur Avenue, Block 426, Lot 11.03, located in the WSD zoning district, seeking C variance relief for minimum lot area, minimum lot width, minimum side yards north and south, minimum rear yard, minimum side yards north and south deck, minimum total landscape coverage, and potentially others in order to renovate an existing single-family home. Current on taxes, water, and sewer payments, proof of advertising, and notifications provided. Represented by Eric Goldstein.
You want to go?
Yeah, let me clear up a couple things. My report is based on the application of Gregory and Rachel Georges, 206 North Decatur Avenue, Block 426, Lot 11.03, located in the WSD zoning district. Again, elevation 9 is the current FEMA zone. The background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief so that a rear yard deck can be enlarged and replaced on a property that has been subdivided for fee simple, keyword fees, another fee simple, which created two undersized lots. Again, so the purpose of my statement of that is, even though the variances are being sought for residential ground floor and use, lot width, they were already approved. So there are existing nonconformities. There's essentially 4 variances. And my zoning chart on page 2 is the deck, minimum side yards for the elevated deck, because it's higher than 18 inches, has to meet the building setbacks of 5 feet for the side. You're 3.7 on the one, 4.8 on the other. So there are 2 variances. The rear yard setback, again, because you're subject to the principal building setback requirements over 18 inches, which is 20 feet. Existing is 21 feet, basically to the landing, and the expansion will be 12 feet. That's a variance. And landscape area total requirement is 35%. They're at 33.07%, 29.07%. That's a variance. It's an expansion of a non-conforming landscape coverage. And again, the applicant and I and his engineer, we went back and forth trying to create this and not be, if this deck was 10 inches above grade, they wouldn't be here. And we couldn't mitigate any landscape coverage issues. So that's another reason why we're here. But essentially, it's the elevated deck and the rear yard on an approved fee simple subdivision that was done years ago. And here we are. So, Mr. Goldstein.
Thank you, Mr. McLaren. We, of course, concur with your report. Property owners to my left, Mr. Georges, Mr. Chu is to my right. Interestingly, Mr. Georges has told me he also does not have an association. So I don't know how some of these buildings operate, but this one hopefully will be a little bit easier. Does not appear to be anybody from the public here, which is good to some extent, I suppose. So we agree with your letter, your report. Mr. Chu has prepared a plan. I'm going to turn it over to him.
Real quick, the elevated deck, it's going to be open slotted boards, is that?
Yes, it is.
And what will be below that deck?
Open virgin soil. So,
Okay.
basically,
All right, let's just get you sworn in real quick.
yep,
Yeah, he's going to be sworn
So
in.
you don't lie.
I'll try not to.
Just give us your name and address for the record.
My name's Arthur Chu. I'm a professional engineer. Address 130 West Seaview Avenue in Linwood.
If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth?
I do.
And Mr. Chu was here just a couple months ago, engineer and planner. Assume
Yeah,
it's acceptable.
I accept this.
All right, Arthur, you've prepared the plan. And I think Mr. McLaren had a question first. So.
So basically, this is all going to be open slotted deck. They're going to use Trex board, so water that lands on it can go through it, and below it, it will be open virgin ground. We're removing a concrete area, so we're basically creating more pervious area in the backyard if anyone had any concerns about drainage or those sort of things. So we're improving the situation that way. The existing deck is rotted, slanted, it's basically falling off the back. We wanted to improve it. We went back and forth with many different options. They basically want some outdoor private, like living space, dining space, put up a picnic table back there so they can entertain in their backyard in the summertime. And the existing deck is just basically walk out and then walk down steps. It's just an exit out the back of the house. So that's the basic concept there.
I'm sorry.
Okay, what about you moved the fence all the way back, correct? They took the fence out so it goes back to the neighbor's fence.
Yeah, we're.
And there's a big ravine there. There's a big, deep channel there behind that.
They were looking to move it back, to move that fence back to.
Yeah, they removed that fence,
Yeah.
because I went back there. And there's a deep hole, about 2 foot by 2 foot, the whole length of the property. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, why don't we have Mr. George sworn in? Mr.
Okay.
Provenzano? Come on.
Mr. Georges, just Gregory Georges, I assume,
Yes,
206 North Decatur Avenue.
that's correct.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you'll give will be the truth?
I do.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Can you,
What's the ditch?
So there was a ditch in between the two, the property lines, so
right,
we had removed the fence just to clean up the back area, and it was just weeds overgrown, so, I mean, our plan is just to put the fence back to the original place where it was, so,
oh, so
yeah, yeah.
you're gonna leave that space between the two fences then?
Yeah, we don't have any plans to fill that in.
Okay,
no.
all right.
What's it for?
That's a great question.
He just bought the place.
Yeah, we just, in October, so.
I didn't know if it was a drainage or,
It probably has something to do with drainage. If you look back there, the lot behind seems to pitch into that. And then this lot sort of has, is pretty flat.
but it's
So-
on your property, right?
Correct. Yeah. He didn't
All
want to call, you know.
The goal was
All
not
right,
to
go
touch it or mess around with it because we knew that you'd be looking and paying attention. So, Mr. Chu, we've obviously discussed over the course of time your design of the deck. You've basically designed this with the understanding that it did require a variance. In your professional opinion, do you think this satisfies Margate zoning code along with the state of New Jersey municipal land use law, that the positives outweigh any negatives?
I do. The lot's exceptionally narrow, so you have a strange shape there, much smaller than any other lot in Margate. And so it limits them with things. Some of the variances that we need for the deck, we're not expanding anything that's from what's existing. We're just going back. So sideways, we're not going anywhere. The only real variance that's creating new is to give them some livable space. We could have put the deck down lower, but then it becomes a lot of steps and not as much usable space. We thought this was a more efficient use of a deck there.
Could you see any negatives possibly associated with this if the board were to grant this application?
I do not. If you look at the properties, the adjacent property to the left has a much bigger deck with a shed, and if you look at the property to the right, they also have a bigger deck too. It's very much what the neighborhood has. This is a matching side by side, and then there's a similar matching fee simple property next door. So his neighbors on either side are basically bigger than he is, and he's in conformance with the neighborhood.
We can put on more proofs. The board has seen what we're doing here. It's a deck. It's not any bigger than perhaps, we probably could have gotten a little bigger, but we didn't. We'll answer any questions the board might have. We know it's been a long night, so we'll defer to the board to tell us what to do next.
Just question, you said that you're taking some concrete out and you're actually adding more land?
So we're taking this, there's a concrete pad in the backyard. I guess it was for a shed or for future shed or something along those lines. Part of the reason, one of the initial approaches was to do a lower deck and then to do a shed. We're just doing the upper deck. He's gonna put little doors underneath so he can put his surfboards or kayaks or whatever his beach stuff that can get wet can go underneath. But it's still gonna be on natural ground. He's not pouring a concrete pad underneath, so any rainwater that goes through there, he can, do some outdoor storage underneath there, but just beach toys or whatever.
But you're eliminating the concrete pad.
Yes, this concrete pad's gone. Gone, and there's grass. It's already gone.
Yeah, they're trying to mitigate some of that loss of landscaping.
No swimming pools.
No swimming pool. Not yet. Maybe an above ground right on top of the deck.
The ditch could fill up with water, I guess.
Yeah.
This is a 4-unit subdivision that was approved many years ago.
So,
Anybody else from the board?
Though the deck is slatted, it still counts against landscape, right?
Margate has a unique,
Right.
we don't have a lot coverage
Right.
ordinance. It implies that 65% is the allowable lot coverage. The remainder has to be, of 35%, is supposed to be vegetative surface. So many towns, including our neighbors in Ventnor, open slotted deck, they give you 50% credit of lot coverage.
How much you give you?
50%. That's not the case here, so that they need a landscape coverage variance.
Yeah, and Roger, in your report, did I hear you mention if the deck was lower, they wouldn't be here?
We'd still be here for landscape.
Right, they wouldn't be here for the setbacks.
All right, I got it, thank you.
Because it's higher than
Deck would
18
be
inches.
low enough.
Yep.
In Arthur and I's discussion of the evolvement of the project, I said, look, you can put that at grade and not be here if you can mitigate the landscaping. So if they're coming in, they might as well ask for, I understand the reason why they want it elevated, so they can walk right out onto it.
And then also by it being elevated, it eliminates the need for him to put a shed like the neighbors have.
Right.
So you can do the storage right underneath.
Anybody else?
You still have the ground absorption too, even though it's not considered landscaping. It's ground that absorbs the rainwater and
Right.
preserves.
You're not
the
creating runoff.
Local aquifer.
Yep.
Although he's gonna be filling up all the kayaks and stuff.
All right.
Just turn them upside down.
Yeah, we rest, I mean, subject to the public.
Anybody in the public like to speak? No?
Public's closed, and if there's no other questions, it's just another C variance application. 4 C variances, side yard setback for the deck on the right side and the rear, 4.8, or 5 is required, they're at 4.8. Same thing on the left side for side yard setback, 5 is required, they're proposing 3.7. The rear yard setback to the deck, 20 feet's required, 12 is proposed, and then landscape coverage, 35% is required, and they're going to be at 29.07%. And we'll just say as conditions, anything in Mr. McLaren's report, any representations made will be followed, subject to any outside approvals, just the typical standard conditions.
Motion?
Make that motion?
Second. You second?
Richard Patterson?
Well, I think this is a classic case of it's conforming to the neighborhood. It's actually less than what the neighbors have. Even though it is lessening the landscape coverage, it's not lessening the permeability of the land surface. So I don't see any detriments, and I see it fitting in the neighborhood. So in that situation, with no detriments, I vote yes.
Michael Richmond?
Yeah, I really don't see any ill effect on the neighborhood. In fact, I was seeing that, I know it's been built for a long time, but actually the rear yard setback, they're allowed, 25 feet? No, they're allowed 20, and they're 25, right? So, yeah.
To the house.
Right, so that's a good thing, right? Yeah. Anyway.
It's not bad.
I approve it.
Stephen Giesecke?
I see this as an improvement, and I see no detriments to this. I approve.
Margaret Gubernalty?
I agree with the other board members. I see no negative impact, and I vote in favor of the application.
John Pitts?
Yeah, nothing more to say. I think all the other board members have said it, so I approve.
Jim Galantino?
Alex Lynx built those back in the day, back in 2000. Alex Lynx. Yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
I approve the application.
Andrew Campbell?
Removing the concrete will definitely improve the absorption of the water, which is a good thing, which will offset anybody putting a pool in down the street. Also, if my neighbors had a bigger deck than I did, I'd be jealous, and I'd want a deck enlargement too. I approve.
Deck prosthetic.
Craig Palmisano?
Yeah, I also agree with the other board members, and I approve.
The application is approved with 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you.
All right, we're good?
I'll make a
Motion to close?
All in favor?
Aye.